She was supposed to give him a ticket. Instead, she saw the wedding ring on his finger and the empty seat where a wife should have been. When Officer Megan Brooks pulled over Lucas Hale on that rain-soaked night, she thought it was just another speeding violation. But one careless joke about the wife waiting at home shattered everything. Because Lucas's wife wasn't waiting anywhere. She had been gone for 2 years. And in the back seat, a 5-year-old boy watched his father's heart break all over again. What happens when two broken people collide at life's worst moments? Stay with me until the end to find out. Hit that like button and comment your city below. I want to see how far this story travels. The windshield wipers couldn't keep up with the rain. Lucas Hale gripped the steering wheel of his aging Honda Accord, knuckles whitening as sheets of water cascaded down the glass faster than the blades could clear them. The dashboard clock glowed 4:47 p.m. in harsh blue digits. 13 minutes until Noah's therapy appointment, and they were still 20 minutes away under normal conditions. These were not normal conditions. "Daddy, are we going to be late?" Lucas glanced in the rearview mirror at his 5-year-old son, buckled securely in his booster seat, clutching a worn stuffed elephant named Gerald. Noah's dark eyes, so much like his mother's that it sometimes stole Lucas's breath, watched him with that particular mixture of concern and trust that only children could manage. "We're going to try really hard not to be, buddy," Lucas said, forcing his voice into something resembling calm. "Dr. Patterson understands when the weather's bad." What Lucas didn't say was that this was the third appointment they'd nearly missed this month. What he didn't say was that the speech therapist had gently suggested that consistency was crucial for Noah's progress, that the boy's selective mutism wouldn't improve if his sessions kept getting disrupted. What he didn't say was that he'd left work early again, probably earning another disapproving look from his supervisor because the babysitter had called in sick and there was no one else. There was never anyone else. The speedometer crept up, 55, 60, 65 in a 45 zone. Lucas knew it was reckless. He knew it was exactly the kind of decision that could make everything worse. But the thought of Noah sitting in that waiting room, watching other kids come and go, wondering why his father couldn't even get him to an appointment on time. Red and blue lights exploded in his rear view mirror. "No," Lucas breathed. "No, no, no." He pulled over to the shoulder, the tires splashing through puddles that had formed along the edge of the road. Rain hammered the roof of the car like 1,000 tiny fists, and Lucas dropped his forehead against the steering wheel for just a moment, allowing himself 3 seconds of defeat before he had to be a functional adult again. "Daddy?" Noah's voice was small, uncertain. "Are we in trouble?" Lucas turned around, manufactured a smile that felt like it might crack his face. "No, baby. Daddy just made a mistake. It's okay. Everything's going to be okay." The words tasted like ash in his mouth. Through the rain-streaked side mirror, he watched a figure emerge from the patrol car. A woman, he could tell by her silhouette, moving with purposeful efficiency despite the downpour. She wore the standard dark uniform of the local police department, and as she approached, Lucas noticed she'd forgone an umbrella entirely, letting the rain soak through her regulation jacket as if it simply wasn't worth acknowledging. He rolled down his window, and immediately cold water spattered across his face and the interior of the car. "License and registration, please." Her voice was professional, clipped, but not unkind. Lucas fumbled for his wallet, his fingers suddenly clumsy as he extracted his driver's license. The registration was in the glove compartment, and he had to lean across the passenger seat to retrieve it, painfully aware of every second ticking away. "I know I was speeding," he said as he handed over the documents. "I'm sorry. I know that's not an excuse, but my son has an appointment and we're already late, and the rain is why you should have been going slower, not faster." Lucas looked up at her for the first time. Officer M. Brooks, according to her nameplate. She had dark hair pulled back in a severe ponytail, rain dripping down a face that might have been carved from stone for all the expression it showed. But her eyes, brown, sharp, missing nothing, those eyes held something that contradicted the rigid set of her jaw, something that looked almost like understanding. "I know," he said quietly. "You're right, I know." She glanced at his license, then at the registration, then through the window at Noah in the back seat. Something shifted in her expression, too subtle to name. Wait here. She walked back to her patrol car and Lucas watched her go, then turned to check on Noah. The boy had pressed himself against the window, watching the officer with wide eyes. It's okay, buddy. She's just doing her job. Is she going to take you to jail? No, Noah. No, she's just going to give Daddy a ticket. It's like a note that says I have to pay money for breaking the rules. Like a timeout for grown-ups? Despite everything, Lucas felt a ghost of a smile cross his face. Yeah, exactly like that. The minutes stretched like taffy. Lucas watched the clock change from 4:52 to 4:53 to 4:54, each digit a small death. He thought about calling Dr. Patterson's office, but what would he even say? Sorry, I was speeding because I'm barely holding my life together, and now I'm going to be even later because I'm getting a ticket. And please don't give up on my son because I'm clearly failing at everything. Officer Brooks returned, a clipboard in hand, and Lucas's heart sank at the sight of the citation already filled out. Mr. Hale. She leaned down to window level, and this close, he could see the raindrops caught in her eyelashes, the slight tension in her jaw. You were doing 67 in a 45 zone in these conditions. That's not just speeding. That's reckless. I know. I'm sorry. You keep saying that. There was no judgment in her tone, just observation. But sorry doesn't undo what happens when you hydroplane into oncoming traffic with your son in the back seat. The words hit him like a physical blow and he flinched. She was right. She was absolutely right, and he hated her for it, and he hated himself more. I understand, he said, his voice thick. It won't happen again. She studied him for a long moment, then glanced at his left hand where it rested on the steering wheel, at the gold band that still circled his ring finger. Running late to meet the wife? The question was casual, almost friendly, the kind of throwaway comment people made 100 times a day without thinking. But it landed on Lucas like a bomb, detonating somewhere deep in his chest where he kept all the things he couldn't afford to feel during daylight hours. He didn't answer immediately. Couldn't answer. His throat had closed up and he was suddenly, terrifyingly aware of the tears pricking at the corners of his eyes. Not now. Please. Not now. Mr. Hale? There is no wife. The words came out rough, scraped raw. Not anymore. He watched her face change, watched the professional mask crack, watched understanding flood in, followed immediately by horror at what she'd just said. Her eyes dropped to the ring, then back up to his face, and for a moment she looked as exposed as he felt. She stopped, started again. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have assumed. It's fine. It wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. Can I just have the ticket, please? We're really late. But something had shifted in the space between them. Officer Brooks looked at the citation in her hand, then through the window at Noah, who had gone very quiet in his booster seat, clutching Gerald the elephant like a lifeline. How long ago? She asked softly. Lucas should have told her it was none of her business, should have maintained the boundaries between traffic stop and personal revelation. But the rain was still falling, and his son was still watching, and 2 years of grief and exhaustion had worn away whatever walls he might have once had. 2 years, 3 months, and 11 days. He didn't know why he was so precise. He didn't know why he told her at all, but the words fell out of him like stones, heavy and inevitable. Officer Brooks was quiet for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She tore the citation in half. You're getting a warning, she said. One time only. Get your son to his appointment, Mr. Hale. And for what it's worth, she paused, seemed to wrestle with something. The ring. I get it. Some things you're not ready to let go of, even when everyone else thinks you should. Before he could respond, she was walking back to her patrol car, and Lucas was left sitting in the rain with half a torn ticket and a tightness in his chest that he couldn't name.
What's his soul?
They made it to Dr. Patterson's office with 2 minutes to spare. The therapist, a kind-eyed woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and a collection of colorful scarves, didn't comment on their disheveled appearance or the rain they tracked across her pristine carpet. She simply smiled at Noah, complimented Gerald the elephant on his distinguished appearance, and ushered the boy into her office with the promise of new stickers for his progress chart. Lucas collapsed into one of the waiting room chairs, suddenly aware of how wet he was, how tired he was, how close he'd come to falling apart in front of a complete stranger. The ring on his finger felt heavier than usual. He'd thought about taking it off more times than he could count. Sarah had been gone for over 2 years now, and the grief counselor he'd seen briefly, before the sessions became too expensive and too painful, had gently suggested that holding on to symbols could sometimes prevent healing. His mother had said, more bluntly, that wearing a dead woman's ring wasn't healthy for him or for Noah, but every time he tried to remove it, he felt like he was betraying something, betraying Sarah, betraying the promises they'd made, betraying the life they were supposed to have together. Noah had been 3 when Sarah died. A brain aneurysm, the doctors had said, quick and painless, as if that was supposed to be a comfort. One moment she was standing in the kitchen, laughing at something on her phone, and the next she was on the floor, and by the time the ambulance arrived, she was gone. Noah had been in his high chair. He'd seen everything, and for 6 months afterward he hadn't spoken a single word. The selective mutism had improved gradually with time and therapy and Lucas's desperate, clumsy attempts at being both father and mother to a traumatized child. Noah talked now, at home anyway, and in Dr. Patterson's office, and occasionally at school if he felt safe enough. But there were still days when the words wouldn't come, when the little boy retreated somewhere Lucas couldn't follow, and all he could do was hold his son and wait for him to find his way back. 45 minutes later, Noah emerged from the office with a sheet of dinosaur stickers and a smile that made everything else worth it. Dr. Patterson says I'm making excellent progress, Noah announced, carefully placing a Stegosaurus sticker on Lucas's jacket. She says my words are getting braver. That's because you're brave, Lucas said, scooping his son up and holding him close. The bravest kid I know. On the drive home, Noah fell asleep in his car seat, Gerald the elephant tucked under his chin. Lucas drove slowly, carefully, keeping well under the speed limit despite the empty roads. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the world washed clean and gleaming under the streetlights. He couldn't stop thinking about Officer Brooks, not because of the torn ticket, though that kindness had surprised him, not even because of her comment about the ring, though that had pierced something he'd thought was numb by now. No. It was the look in her eyes when she'd realized her mistake, the flash of genuine pain, like she knew exactly what it meant to carry loss you couldn't explain. Who was she? What had she lost? Lucas shook his head, trying to clear it. It didn't matter. They would never see each other again. The city had over 100,000 people, and the chances of their paths crossing twice were essentially zero. He had enough complications in his life without adding a mysterious police officer to the list. The apartment was quiet when they got home. The kind of quiet that used to feel peaceful when Sarah was alive, but now felt like absence. Lucas carried Noah inside, still sleeping, and laid him gently on his bed, pulling off his shoes but leaving him in his clothes. The boy didn't stir, worn out from the day's emotional expenditure. Lucas stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching his son sleep, feeling the familiar mixture of love and terror that had become his constant companion since Sarah's death. This child was depending on him. This small, wounded, beautiful child was counting on him to get everything right, and most days Lucas felt like he was barely treading water. His phone buzzed, a text from his supervisor. Need to discuss your schedule. Please see me first thing tomorrow. Lucas stared at the message until the screen went dark, then shoved the phone in his pocket and went to the kitchen to figure out what he could make for dinner with the random contents of his refrigerator. This was his life now. This collection of small, grinding struggles that never seemed to add up to anything except exhaustion. Getting Noah to school and therapy and doctor's appointments. Managing a job that demanded more hours than he had to give. Paying bills that always seemed to grow faster than his salary. Trying, somehow, to be enough for a child who had already lost so much. He found half a package of pasta and some questionable-looking tomato sauce, and decided that would have to do. 3 days later, Lucas took Noah to the park. It was Saturday, one of those rare spring mornings that felt like a gift after the endless gray of winter. The sky was a sharp, impossible blue, and the air smelled like cut grass and possibility. Noah had been asking to go to the park for weeks, and Lucas had kept putting it off because there was always something more urgent, something that demanded his attention more than his son's happiness. Today, he decided, was going to be different. They found a spot near the playground, and Lucas spread out the old blanket they'd brought from home while Noah ran toward the swings with single-minded determination. For a while, Lucas just sat and watched his son pump his legs to go higher, watched the wind catch his dark hair, watched the pure, uncomplicated joy on his face. Sarah would have loved this, he thought. She would have been pushing him, making him laugh, probably trying to see how high she could go herself because she'd never quite outgrown her own childhood delight in simple pleasures. The ache was still there, but it had changed over time. Softened, maybe. Become something he could carry instead of something that carried him under. "Higher, Daddy! Push me higher!" Lucas jogged over and gave Noah's swing a solid push, earning a shriek of delight that made several nearby parents smile. He fell into the rhythm of it, push, catch, push, letting his mind empty of everything except this moment, this child, this perfect ordinary morning. And then he saw her. She was sitting on a bench near the ice cream cart, out of uniform, wearing jeans and a faded blue sweater that made her look younger, softer, entirely different from the rigid officer who had pulled him over in the rain. Her dark hair was loose around her shoulders, and she was watching the children play with an expression that Lucas recognized instantly. Longing, mixed with something like grief. She hadn't seen him yet, and for a moment he considered pretending he hadn't seen her either. It would be easier, cleaner. They could remain strangers who had shared one awkward moment in a rainstorm, nothing more. But Noah chose that moment to lose his grip on Gerald the elephant, and the worn stuffed animal went flying through the air to land directly at Officer Brooks's feet. She picked it up, looked at it, and then her eyes followed the trajectory back to the swings, to Noah, who had already jumped down and was running toward her with the fearless trust of childhood. "That's Gerald," Noah announced. "He's my best friend. Well, my best animal friend. My best people friend is Daddy." Officer Brooks looked down at the earnest little face in front of her, and something in her expression cracked open. "Gerald's a very handsome elephant," she said softly. "I can see why he's your best animal friend." "He used to be Mommy's," Noah said matter-of-factly. "But she went away to be a star, so now he's mine. Daddy says she picked the brightest star she could find so we can always see her at night." Lucas reached them just in time to see the color drain from Officer Brooks's face. Their eyes met over Noah's head, and the moment stretched, full of things neither of them knew how to say. "We meet again, Mr. Hale," she said finally. "Apparently." He put a hand on Noah's shoulder, gently steering him back toward the playground. "Buddy, why don't you go try the monkey bars? I need to talk to this nice lady for a minute." Noah considered this, then nodded seriously. "Okay, but don't let her give you another timeout for grown-ups." He ran off, Gerald clutched safely in his arms, leaving Lucas alone with a woman who had seen him at his worst and shown him unexpected grace. "I should apologize," Lucas said, "for the other day, for unloading on you like that. You were just doing your job, and I made it weird. You made it human." She stood up, and he noticed for the first time that they were almost the same height. "I'm the one who should apologize. What I said about your wife, you didn't know. I should have been more careful." She glanced toward the playground where Noah was now attempting the monkey bars with more enthusiasm than skill. "He's a good kid. He's the best thing in my life." The words came out simple and true, and Officer Brooks nodded like she understood exactly what he meant. "I'm Megan," she said suddenly. "Since we've already skipped past all the normal getting-to-know-you stuff straight into tragedy, we might as well be on first-name terms." Lucas felt something loosen in his chest, something that had been wound tight for longer than he could remember. "Lucas, but you knew that from my license." Lucas Hale, 842 Maple Street, apartment 4B, born June 15th. She smiled slightly. "It's a lot easier to remember someone when you've written them a ticket, even one you ended up tearing in half." "Why did you do that?" The question had been bothering him for days. Traffic cops didn't tear up tickets for people they'd never met, especially not people who'd been doing 22 miles over the limit in dangerous conditions. It wasn't logical. It wasn't professional. Megan looked away toward the ice cream cart, toward anywhere but his face. "My mother has dementia," she said finally. "Early onset. She's only 62, and most days she doesn't recognize me anymore. When she first got sick, I used to break every speed limit in the city trying to get to her when the care facility called. I got 3 tickets in 6 months before my captain pulled me aside and told me I was going to lose my license if I kept it up. She paused, and Lucas waited, understanding that whatever she was going to say next mattered. Nobody ever tore up those tickets, she continued quietly. Nobody ever looked at me and saw anything except a reckless driver who should know better. So when I saw you, wet, exhausted, wearing a wedding ring you can't take off, trying to get your kid to an appointment, she shrugged. I saw myself. And I decided to be the person I wished someone had been for me. Lucas didn't know what to say. The intimacy of the confession startled him, the way she had matched his vulnerability with her own, creating a strange equilibrium between them. I'm sorry about your mother, he said finally. I'm sorry about your wife. They stood there for a moment, 2 wounded people recognizing each other in the bright morning light, and Lucas felt something shift in his chest. Not attraction, exactly. Something quieter, something like recognition. Daddy! Daddy, I made it across the whole thing! Noah came running back, triumph radiating from every inch of his small body, and the moment broke. That's amazing, buddy! Lucas swept his son up, spinning him around until Noah giggled. I'm so proud of you. When he put Noah down, the boy turned to Megan with the directness of childhood. Do you want to get ice cream with us? Daddy always gets chocolate chip and I get strawberry, but you can get whatever kind you want. Megan looked at Lucas, a question in her eyes. He should say no. He should make some excuse about having to get home, about not wanting to impose on her day off, about all the logical reasons why sharing ice cream with a stranger was a bad idea. We'd love the company, he heard himself say. If you're not busy. The smile that crossed Megan's face was small but genuine, transforming her stern features into something almost soft. I'm not busy, and I've always been a mint chocolate chip person myself. They walked to the cart together, the 3 of them, and Lucas tried not to think about how natural it felt, how right, in some way he couldn't explain. Noah chattered the whole way about the monkey bars and Gerald and the dinosaur stickers from Dr. Patterson, and Megan listened with the kind of focused attention that Lucas had rarely seen adults give to children. You're a police officer, Noah said as they waited for their ice cream. It wasn't a question. That's right. Do you catch bad guys? Sometimes. Megan crouched down to Noah's level, her expression serious. But mostly, I try to help people. That's the most important part of the job. Noah considered this. Daddy says helpers are the best kind of people. Daddy sounds pretty smart. He is. He's the smartest person I know, except for maybe Dr. Patterson. And Gerald, but Gerald doesn't really talk, so it's hard to know for sure. Megan laughed, a real laugh, surprised out of her, and Lucas felt something dangerous bloom in his chest, something that felt like possibility. They sat on the bench where Lucas had first seen her, eating their ice cream while Noah ran back to the playground with a cone rapidly melting down his hand. The silence between them was comfortable somehow, despite everything. How long have you been a cop? Lucas asked. 8 years, started right out of college. She licked a drip of mint chocolate chip from her cone. My dad was a detective for 30 years. I always knew I wanted to follow in his footsteps. Is he retired now? He died 4 years ago. Heart attack. She said it matter-of-factly, but Lucas saw her knuckles whiten around the cone. Sometimes I think that's what started my mom's decline, losing him. They were married 40 years. I don't think she knew how to be a person without him. Lucas thought about his own parents, still alive and still married, living 3 states away in the house where he'd grown up. They called every Sunday, and his mother sent cards for every holiday, and they'd offered 100 times to move closer, or to have him move back home. He'd refused every time, clinging to his independence even when it meant drowning alone. Do you have siblings? He asked. To help with your mom? A brother. He lives in Seattle with his wife and kids, calls twice a year, sends flowers on Mother's Day. The bitterness in her voice was unmistakable. Says he can't handle seeing her like this, as if I have a choice. I'm sorry. You keep saying that. I keep meaning it. She looked at him then, really looked, and he felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the things he'd already told her. There was something about Megan Brooks that cut through the polite fictions most people hid behind, that demanded honesty even when honesty was painful. My wife's name was Sarah, he said suddenly. She was an elementary school teacher, 3rd grade. She used to come home with glitter in her hair almost every day because her kids were always making art projects. Even after she'd shower, I'd find glitter on her pillow in the morning. He didn't know why he was telling her this. He hadn't talked about Sarah to anyone except his grief counselor and his parents in years, but the words kept coming, spilling out of him like water from a cracked vessel. She wanted a big family. 4 kids, she used to say, 2 boys and 2 girls. She had the names picked out and everything. He smiled slightly. Noah was first because she loved the story. The ark, the promise. She said he was going to be the beginning of something beautiful. And then she died. Lucas looked down at his half-eaten ice cream, suddenly not hungry. Brain aneurysm, no warning. 1 minute she was there, laughing at something on her phone, and the next, he stopped, swallowed hard. Noah saw everything. He was 3. The selective mutism. You noticed. I noticed a lot of things. Megan set down her own cone, her voice gentle. The way he looked at me when I walked up to your car. The way he clutched that elephant like a security blanket. The way he talked just now, so careful with his words, like each one was precious. Lucas nodded slowly. It took him 6 months to speak after she died. 6 months of silence. I thought... He broke off, shook his head. I thought I'd lost them both. But you didn't. No, he came back, slowly, piece by piece, he came back. Lucas watched his son attempting the slide now, climbing up the wrong way because that was more interesting than the stairs. He still has bad days, days when the words won't come. When he goes somewhere I can't reach him, but he's getting better. Dr. Patterson says he's making excellent progress. You've done a good job with him. The compliment hit Lucas harder than he expected, and he felt tears prick at his eyes. Nobody ever told him he was doing a good job. His parents worried. His coworkers complained about his schedule. The other parents at Noah's school looked at him with a mixture of pity and unease, like single fatherhood was a disease they were afraid of catching. I'm just trying to survive, he said honestly. Every day is just trying to survive. Megan was quiet for a long moment. Then she said softly, I know exactly what you mean. Aunt. They exchanged phone numbers before parting. It felt like a significant step, though Lucas wasn't sure toward what. Friendship? Something more? Or just the acknowledgement that they'd seen too much of each other's wounds to pretend they were strangers? For emergencies, Megan said as she typed her number into his phone, or if you ever need someone to talk to, someone who gets it. Same, Lucas said, and meant it. She left first, heading toward the parking lot with a wave over her shoulder, and Lucas sat on the bench for a long time afterward, watching Noah play, thinking about everything and nothing. That night, after dinner and bath time and the careful ritual of bedtime stories, Lucas stood in his darkened bedroom looking at the wedding ring on his finger. For the first time in over 2 years, he took it off. Not forever. He wasn't ready for forever. But he set it carefully on the dresser, next to the framed photo of Sarah that he still kept by his bed, and he looked at the pale strip of skin where the ring had been. I'm not betraying you, he said quietly to the photo. I'm just trying to figure out how to live. Sarah smiled back at him, frozen in time, forever beautiful, forever gone. Lucas went to sleep that night without the ring on his finger, and for the first time in months, he didn't dream of drowning. The text came 3 days later at 11 at night when Lucas was sitting at his kitchen table, staring at a stack of bills he couldn't figure out how to pay. Bad night. Mom didn't recognize me at all. Kept asking when her daughter was going to visit. He stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, I'm sorry, that sounds incredibly hard. It is. I don't know why I'm telling you this, because sometimes you need to tell someone. A long pause. Then, thank you for not trying to fix it. I've learned you can't fix most things. You just have to sit with them. Another pause. That's either really wise or really depressing. Probably both. This time, when she responded, he could almost hear her laugh through the text. Fair enough. They talked for 2 hours that night, about nothing and everything. About her mother's bad days and her brother's absence, and the weight of being the only one who showed up. About Lucas's job and his fear that he was failing Noah, and the way the apartment felt too quiet after bedtime. About grief and guilt, and the strange loneliness of carrying burdens that no one else could see. When Lucas finally fell asleep, his phone was still in his hand, and the last message on the screen was from Megan. Same time tomorrow? He'd responded with a single word. Yes. And something that had been frozen solid in his chest for over 2 years began, very slowly, to thaw. They fell into a routine over the following weeks. Texts during the day, quick check-ins, shared jokes, small moments of connection that brightened hours that would otherwise be gray. Longer conversations at night, after Noah was asleep, when the quiet of the apartment felt less like loneliness and more like intimacy. They didn't see each other in person again. Not at first. It was safer this way, Lucas told himself. Less complicated. But the truth was, he was scared. Scared of what he felt when he saw her name appear on his phone. Scared of the way his heart lifted when she laughed at something he'd said. Scared of the possibility that this might become something more than friendship, and terrified of what that would mean. He wasn't ready. He would never be ready. Sarah had been the love of his life, and he'd made promises to her that didn't end just because she had. And yet, when Megan called him one night, crying, because her mother had wandered out of the care facility and been found 3 blocks away in her nightgown, Lucas didn't hesitate. "Where are you?" "At the facility. They're doing a checkup to make sure she didn't hurt herself." "I'll be there in 20 minutes. "Lucas, you don't have to." "I'll be there in 20 minutes. He called his neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen, who had been watching Noah occasionally in exchange for Lucas fixing things around her apartment, and asked if she could sit with Noah for a few hours. Then he drove across town to a care facility he'd never seen, following the GPS through unfamiliar streets, and found Megan sitting alone in a sterile waiting room with tears streaming down her face. He didn't say anything. He just sat down next to her and pulled her into his arms. She cried for a long time. Ugly crying, the kind that didn't care about dignity or appearances, the kind that had been building up for months or maybe years. Lucas held her through all of it, his hand in her hair, his voice murmuring soft nonsense that didn't mean anything except, I'm here, I'm not leaving." When she finally pulled back, her face was blotchy and swollen, and she looked at him with something like wonder. "Why did you come?" "Because you needed me." "That's not..." She shook her head. "People don't do that, Lucas. People say they'll be there, and then when things get hard, they disappear. My brother did it. My ex-boyfriend did it. Everyone does it." "I'm not everyone." She stared at him, and he could see her trying to find the catch, the hidden agenda, the reason why this kindness would eventually turn into another disappointment. He understood that impulse. He'd had it himself, every time someone had offered help after Sarah died. "I'm not trying to fix anything," he said quietly. "I know I can't fix this. I just didn't want you to be alone." Something broke open in Megan's face then, and she kissed him. It was sudden and desperate, and tasted like salt from her tears, and Lucas kissed her back without thinking, without questioning, without any of the hesitation that had been holding him back for weeks. For a long moment there was nothing but this, her lips against his, her hands fisted in his shirt, the release of something that had been building since that first rain-soaked night. Then reality came crashing back and Megan pulled away. "I'm sorry," she said. "I shouldn't have. I'm a mess right now, and you..." "Megan, you have your own stuff going on, and this isn't fair to you, and Megan?" She stopped, looked at him. "I wanted you to do that," Lucas said simply. "I've wanted it for weeks. I've just been too scared to admit it." "Scared of what?" "Of feeling something again. Of wanting something again." He touched her face, wiping away the last of her tears. "Of dishonoring Sarah's memory. Is that what this would be? Dishonoring her?" Lucas thought about it honestly. Thought about Sarah, who had loved him fiercely and wanted his happiness above everything else. Thought about what she would say if she could see him now, sitting in this sterile waiting room with a woman who had also been broken by loss. "No," he said finally. "I don't think she would see it that way." Megan's laugh was shaky but real. "So what do we do now?" "I don't know." He took her hand, laced his fingers through hers. Figure it out, I guess, together. Together, she repeated, like she was testing the word. I'm not very good at together. Neither am I, but maybe we can learn. A nurse appeared in the doorway then, calling Megan's name, and the moment was over. But as they stood up, Megan's hand still in his, Lucas felt something he hadn't felt in over 2 years. Hope. Small and fragile and easily crushed, but real. And for the first time since Sarah died, he thought that maybe, just maybe, he might be ready to try again. The weeks that followed moved like water finding its natural course, slowly at first, uncertain of its direction, then gaining momentum as the path became clear. Lucas found himself living for the small moments now. The buzz of his phone during his lunch break, knowing it would be Megan sending him a photo of something absurd she'd seen on patrol, a dog wearing sunglasses in a convertible, a street sign that someone had altered to read "Slow Children at Play Video Games." The sound of her voice late at night, tired but warm, telling him about her day while he lay in bed and listened like her words were music he'd been missing his whole life. They saw each other twice more in person during those first 3 weeks, once for coffee on her day off, once for another trip to the park with Noah. Both times they'd kept things careful, appropriate. The kiss in the hospital waiting room hung between them like an unspoken promise, acknowledged but not repeated. Lucas told himself he was being responsible, taking things slow, making sure this was real before he let it become something that could hurt him, or worse, hurt Noah. But the truth was more complicated than that. "You're scared," Megan said one night, her voice crackling slightly through the phone speaker. It wasn't an accusation, just an observation, the kind she was good at making. Lucas stared at the ceiling of his bedroom, phone resting on the pillow beside his head. "I'm terrified," he admitted. "Of me? Of everything. Of wanting this. Of not wanting it enough. Of what happens if it works. Of what happens if it doesn't." Megan was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "My therapist, back when I could afford one, used to tell me that fear is just excitement without breath, that the physical sensations are exactly the same. The only difference is the story we tell ourselves about what we're feeling. That's either profound or complete nonsense. Probably both." He could hear her smile through the phone. "But here's what I know, Lucas. I'm scared too. I'm scared that I'm too broken for this, that my life is too complicated, that I'm going to drag you into my chaos and you're going to realize you made a mistake." "Megan, let me finish." She took a breath, and when she spoke again, her voice was steadier. "I'm scared of all those things, but I'm more scared of not trying, of spending the rest of my life wondering what could have happened if I'd just been brave enough to reach for it." Lucas closed his eyes. In the darkness behind his eyelids, he saw Sarah's face, not as she'd been at the end, crumpled on the kitchen floor, but as she'd been in life, laughing, vibrant, the kind of person who grabbed happiness with both hands and dared the universe to take it from her. She would have liked Megan, he realized. They would have been friends. "I want to try," he said quietly. "I want to try being brave." "Yeah? Yeah, but I need to do something first, something I should have done a long time ago." "What's that?" Lucas reached over to his nightstand where his wedding ring had sat untouched since that first night he'd taken it off. He picked it up, felt its familiar weight in his palm. "I need to say goodbye." The cemetery was quiet on Saturday morning, dew still clinging to the grass as Lucas made his way between the headstones. Noah walked beside him, holding Gerald in one hand and Lucas's fingers in the other, his small face solemn with the gravity of the occasion. They hadn't been here since the 1-year anniversary of Sarah's death. Lucas had told himself it was because he didn't need a grave to remember his wife, that she lived on in his heart, and in Noah's face, and in all the small ways their life together had shaped who he'd become. But the truth was simpler and harder. He couldn't bear it. Couldn't bear standing in front of that stone and confronting the finality of what he'd lost. Today, though, he needed to be here. Needed to close this chapter properly before he could begin a new one. Sarah's headstone was simple, white marble, clean lines, the kind of understated elegance she'd always preferred. Her name was carved in letters that still looked sharp and new. Sarah Elizabeth Hale, beloved wife and mother, forever in our hearts. Below that, the dates that contained her entire life. 31 years. Not nearly enough. Hi, Mommy, Noah said, his voice small but clear in the morning stillness. I brought Gerald to see you. He misses you. I miss you too, but Daddy says you're always watching us from your star, so I wave at the sky every night just in case you can see. Lucas felt his throat close up. He'd thought he was prepared for this. He wasn't. Noah continued talking to the headstone, telling Sarah about school and Dr. Patterson and the monkey bars at the park. He mentioned the police officer they'd met, the one who liked mint chocolate chip ice cream and had a nice laugh. He didn't seem to understand the significance of any of it, just reported the facts of his life with the openness of childhood. When he finished, he looked up at Lucas expectantly. Your turn, Daddy. Lucas knelt down so he was level with his son, then turned to face the headstone. The words he'd prepared, the speech he'd rehearsed in his head a dozen times, dissolved like morning mist. Hey, baby, he said instead, his voice rough. I'm sorry I haven't been here. I'm sorry for a lot of things. He paused, swallowed hard. I met someone. Her name is Megan. She's... He stopped, not sure how to describe her. She's broken, like me. She lost her dad a few years ago, and her mom is sick, and she carries the weight of it alone because no one else will help her. She's stubborn and prickly, and she doesn't know how to let people in. But she's trying. We're both trying. Noah leaned against his side, and Lucas put an arm around him automatically. I know you'd want me to be happy. You always wanted that for me, even more than you wanted it for yourself. And I'm trying, Sarah. I'm trying to figure out how to be happy again without feeling like I'm betraying everything we had. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the wedding ring. It caught the morning light, gleaming gold against his palm. I'm going to put this away now, not throw it away. I could never do that. But I can't wear it anymore. It's not because I've forgotten you or stopped loving you. It's because I need to let myself love someone else too. And I don't think I can do that while I'm still holding on to this. He pressed the ring to his lips, one final kiss, then tucked it carefully back into his pocket. Watch over us, okay? Watch over Noah. And if you have any pull up there, maybe help me not screw this up. He stood, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand, and Noah tugged at his jacket. Is Mommy happy, Daddy? Up with the stars? Lucas looked up at the sky, pale blue and endless, and chose to believe. Yeah, buddy, I think she's really happy. Good, Noah nodded firmly. Then we should be happy too. She wouldn't want us to be sad forever. Out of the mouths of babes, Lucas thought. 5 years old and already wiser than his father. They stayed a while longer, tidying the area around the headstone, leaving a small bouquet of wildflowers that Noah had picked from their neighbor's garden. With permission, Lucas had made sure. Then they walked back to the car hand in hand, and Lucas felt something shift inside him. Not closure exactly. Grief didn't close like a book, but something like peace, something like permission. When he got home, he texted Megan, I'm ready now, really ready. Her response came within minutes. Me too. Dinner tomorrow? I want to cook for you, both of you. A bowl of... Lucas smiled at his phone, something he'd been doing more and more lately. We'd like that. Megan's apartment was small but warm, filled with plants that cascaded from shelves and framed photographs that told the story of a life well lived before tragedy had rewritten everything. Lucas stood in the doorway, holding a bottle of wine and feeling suddenly absurdly nervous. It's not much, Megan said, misreading his expression. I know it's cramped, but it's perfect. He stepped inside and Noah immediately spotted a cat lounging on the couch. You have a cat! Daddy, she has a cat! His name is Sergeant, Megan said, crouching down to Noah's level. He's very old and very grumpy, but he loves children. You can pet him if you're gentle. Noah approached the cat with reverent caution, and Sergeant, contradicting his owner's description, immediately began purring like a motor. Lucas watched his son's face light up with pure joy, and something clicked into place in his chest. This was what he'd been missing. This feeling of rightness, of pieces fitting together. You're staring, Megan said, coming to stand beside him. Sorry, this is nice. Being here, being with you. She smiled, that small, genuine smile that he'd come to recognize as her real one, the one she didn't show to most people. Come help me in the kitchen. I'm making lasagna and I need someone to judge whether I've added enough garlic. Is there such a thing as enough garlic? A man after my own heart. The kitchen was tiny, barely room for two people, and they kept bumping into each other as they worked, reaching for the same spoon, turning at the same moment, bodies almost touching. Each near collision sent electricity through Lucas's skin, and he knew from the slight flush on Megan's cheeks that she felt it too. Tell me something, she said as she layered noodles into a baking dish. Something I don't know about you. Lucas considered the question. I was pre-med in college, made it all the way to my senior year before I realized I didn't actually want to be a doctor. I just wanted to make my parents proud. What did you switch to? Business. Not exactly a passion project, but it paid the bills. He paused. Sarah wanted me to write. She thought I had talent. I used to make up stories for her, elaborate things with characters and plot twists. She said I should try to publish something. Why didn't you? Life got in the way, work, then Noah, then... He didn't need to finish the sentence. Megan was quiet for a moment, spreading ricotta with careful attention. Maybe you should try again. Writing, I mean. Maybe. Lucas reached past her for the mozzarella, and their arms brushed. Neither of them moved away. Your turn. Tell me something I don't know about you. She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. I almost quit the force. After my dad died, I couldn't see the point anymore. He was the reason I became a cop, and without him there to, I don't know, validate it somehow, the whole thing felt meaningless. What stopped you? A call. Domestic violence situation. Woman barricaded in her bathroom with two kids while her husband tried to break down the door. I was first on scene. Megan's hands had stilled on the baking dish. I got them out, got her to a shelter, connected her with resources. Found out later she got a restraining order, filed for divorce, went back to school for nursing. She's doing okay now. Her kids are doing okay. That's amazing. That's the job. She resumed her work, but Lucas could see the emotion she was trying to hide. That's what it's supposed to be, not tickets and paperwork and politics. Helping people. Making a difference. You make a difference. You made a difference to me. She looked up at him, and for a moment they were frozen there in the tiny kitchen, inches apart, the air between them charged with everything they hadn't said. Daddy, Sergeant fell asleep on my lap. Noah's voice rang out from the living room, breaking the spell. Megan laughed, stepping back and brushing a strand of hair from her face. We should probably rescue him before he's stuck there all night. That cat weighs like 15 pounds. Dinner was simple and perfect. The lasagna was slightly overdone at the edges and slightly underdone in the middle, and it was the best meal Lucas had eaten in years. They sat around Megan's small table, and Noah chattered about everything: school, Dr. Patterson, the drawings he'd been making, the butterfly he'd seen in the garden yesterday. Megan listened to all of it with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at Noah's jokes even when they didn't quite make sense. This is what family feels like, Lucas thought. Not the family he'd lost, but a new one. Different, unexpected, still fragile, still forming, but real. After dinner, they watched a movie, some animated thing that Noah had been begging to see, and somewhere in the middle of it, Noah fell asleep between them on the couch, his head on Lucas's lap and his feet touching Megan's leg. Sergeant had positioned himself on the back of the couch, one proprietary paw resting on Noah's shoulder. He looks so peaceful, Megan whispered. He's comfortable here. Lucas met her eyes over his sleeping son. We both are. I'm glad. She reached over Noah carefully, finding Lucas's hand lacing their fingers together. I was scared you wouldn't be. That this would be too much, too fast. It probably should be. A month ago, I couldn't even take off my wedding ring, and now... He looked around the apartment, at the plants and the photographs and the sleeping cat, at this woman who had stumbled into his life at the worst possible moment and somehow made everything better. Now, I can't imagine going back to how things were before. We don't have to rush anything, Megan said. I know you have Noah to think about. I know this is complicated. Everything is complicated. That doesn't mean it's not worth doing. She smiled, that real smile again, and squeezed his hand. Look at you, being brave. I learned it from someone. They sat like that until the movie ended, hands intertwined over the sleeping child between them, and Lucas felt something he hadn't felt in over 2 years. Hope. Real hope. The kind that wasn't afraid of the future. When he finally had to leave, Noah needed his own bed, his own routine. Megan walked them to the door. Noah was still drowsy, clinging to Lucas's neck, Gerald the elephant tucked under his arm. "Thank you for tonight," Lucas said. "Thank you for coming." She hesitated, then leaned in and kissed him softly. Not desperate like the first time, but gentle. Intentional. A promise rather than an explosion. "Good night, Megan." "Good night, Lucas." "Good night, Noah." "Night, Miss Megan," Noah mumbled into Lucas's shoulder. "I like your cat." Lucas carried his son to the car, and as he buckled Noah into his booster seat, the boy looked up at him with sleepy eyes. "Daddy?" "Yeah, buddy." "Is Miss Megan going to be around for a while?" Lucas thought about the question, about all its implications, about the hope and the fear and the possibility wrapped up in those simple words. "I think so, buddy. I hope so." Noah nodded, apparently satisfied, and closed his eyes. Lucas stood there for a moment, looking back at the building where Megan's window glowed warm against the darkness, and let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. The next few weeks felt like falling, terrifying and exhilarating and completely out of control in the best possible way. They saw each other whenever they could, which wasn't nearly often enough. Megan's shifts were unpredictable, and Lucas's job demanded more of him than ever as his company approached a critical deadline. But they made it work. Early morning coffee before Noah woke up. Late night phone calls when sleep wouldn't come. Stolen lunches in park benches and parking lots, and once, memorably, in the break room of Lucas's office while his coworkers pretended not to stare. Noah took to Megan like he'd been waiting for her his whole short life. He asked about her constantly, drew pictures of her with her police uniform and Sergeant the Cat, counted down the days until he'd see her again. For a child who had struggled to connect with anyone since his mother's death, the attachment was remarkable. "It's not too fast?" Lucas asked Dr. Patterson during one of Noah's sessions. "I'm worried I'm confusing him," the therapist smiled. "Children are more resilient than we give them credit for. Noah isn't confused. He's responding to someone who makes him feel safe. That's healthy, Lucas. It's what we want. But what if it doesn't work out? What if... Then you'll help him through it, the same way you've helped him through everything else." She leaned forward, her expression kind but direct. "You can't protect him from all disappointment. You can only teach him how to handle it. And right now, what you're teaching him is that it's okay to love people even when you're scared." Lucas thought about that conversation a lot over the following days. He thought about fear and love and the way they intertwined, about the risks of opening your heart to someone new. When the last time you'd done it, the ending had nearly destroyed you. But then Megan would text him something silly, or Noah would say her name in his sleep, or he'd catch himself smiling for no reason at all, and the fear didn't seem so important anymore. It was a Thursday evening, 3 weeks after that first dinner at Megan's apartment, when everything started to shift. Lucas was at work, trying to finalize a presentation for the next morning when his phone buzzed with a call from Megan. He almost let it go to voicemail. He was so close to being done, just another hour maybe, but something made him pick up. "Hey, what's up?" "Lucas?" Her voice was strange, flat, like all the emotion had been pressed out of it. "What's wrong?" "It's my mom. She had a fall. They think..." Her voice cracked, just slightly, before she pulled it back together. "They think she broke her hip. I'm at the hospital. I don't know what to do." "Which hospital?" "Memorial, but you don't have to..." "I'm on my way." He saved his presentation, grabbed his jacket, and was out the door before he'd fully processed what he was doing. On the drive over, he called Mrs. Chen and asked if she could stay with Noah a few extra hours. Then he called Noah himself, explained that he'd be late and that Miss Megan needed help, and listened to his son's small voice say, "Tell her I hope she feels better, Daddy." The hospital was chaotic, full of beeping machines and harried staff, and the particular kind of fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly ill. Lucas found Megan in a waiting room on the 3rd floor, sitting alone in a hard plastic chair, staring at nothing. She looked up when he came in, and the vulnerability on her face nearly broke him. "You came." "Of course I came." He sat down beside her, took her hand. Tell me what happened. The story came out in fragments. Her mother, disoriented in the night, had tried to leave her room at the care facility. She'd made it to the stairs before anyone noticed. And then one wrong step, one moment of confusion, and 70 years of life had collided with cold concrete. They say the hip is bad. They might need to do surgery. Megan's voice was hollow. She's 70, Lucas. Surgery at her age with dementia, the outcomes aren't good. What do the doctors say? That we need to wait and see. That's all anyone ever says. Wait and see. Like I have any other option. Lucas didn't try to comfort her with platitudes. Didn't tell her it would be okay when they both knew it might not be. He just held her hand and sat with her in the terrible uncertainty of it, the same way she had sat with him when he'd talked about Sarah in that rain-soaked car. An hour passed, then another. A doctor came and went, delivering cautious optimism. The break was clean, surgery was recommended but not urgent. They'd know more in the morning. Megan nodded through all of it, asked the right questions, projected the calm competence that her job had taught her. But Lucas could see the effort it cost her, the hairline fractures spreading through her composure. When the doctor left, she finally crumbled. I can't do this, she whispered. I can't keep doing this alone. You're not alone. Lucas pulled her close, let her bury her face against his shoulder. I'm here. For how long? The question was muffled against his shirt. Everyone says they'll stay. No one does. I'm not everyone. You don't know that. You don't know what it's like, Lucas. The constant calls, the emergencies, the way every part of my life has to bend around this. It's exhausting. I'm exhausting. Lucas pulled back so he could look at her face. Her eyes were red, her cheeks blotchy, her hair escaping from its usual ponytail in wild strands. She looked defeated in a way he'd never seen before, and it terrified him. Listen to me, he said. I know exactly what it's like to carry something heavy alone. I know what it's like when everyone around you gets tired of your problems, when even the people who love you start to look at you like you're a burden. I lived that for 2 years, Megan. 2 years of pretending I was fine when I was falling apart inside. That's different. It's not. Pain is pain. Exhaustion is exhaustion. And no one should have to carry it alone. He took her face in his hands, made sure she was looking at him. I'm not going anywhere. Not because this is easy, but because you're worth the hard parts. Megan stared at him, and he watched the war play out across her face. The desperate desire to believe him fighting against years of disappointment and abandonment. You mean that? I mean it. Even if... She swallowed hard. Even if this thing with my mom goes on for years, even if I'm more about doctor's appointments and emergency calls than I am about dinner dates and movies, even then, why? The question was simple, but Lucas could hear everything behind it. Why me? Why this? Why would anyone choose to step into this disaster of a life? Because I know what it's like to love someone who needs more than you feel like you have to give, he said slowly. And I know what it's like to lose them anyway, to wish you'd had more time, even the hard time, even the exhausting, painful, impossible time. Megan's breath caught. I wasted months after Sarah died wishing I'd been more patient, wishing I'd complained less about the hard stuff and appreciated more of the good stuff. I can't change that now, but I can choose to do it differently this time. He brushed a tear from her cheek. I choose you, Megan, all of you. The emergency calls and the exhaustion and the beautiful moments in between. I choose all of it. For a long moment, she just looked at him. Then she kissed him, hard, desperate, full of everything she couldn't say out loud. Lucas kissed her back, and it felt like a promise, a vow, a beginning. When they finally broke apart, Megan laughed shakily. I must look like a disaster. You look like someone I want to spend my life figuring out. That's either the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me, or you need glasses. Probably both. She laughed again, and this time it sounded almost real. They stayed at the hospital until visiting hours ended. Then Lucas drove Megan home and made her eat something, soup from a can, but at least it was food. He stayed until she fell asleep on her couch. Sargent curled at her feet. then let himself out quietly and drove home to his son. Noah was still awake when Lucas got back, lying in bed with Gerald clutched to his chest, eyes wide in the darkness. "Is Miss Megan okay?" Lucas sat on the edge of the bed, smoothed his son's hair back from his forehead. "She's going to be okay, buddy. She just had a scary night." "Was it her mommy? The one who's sick?" "Yeah, her mommy fell down and hurt herself." Noah considered this with the gravity that 5-year-olds reserve for matters of real importance. "When I fall down, you kiss it better. Did Miss Megan kiss her mommy better?" "It's a little more complicated than that, but yes, in a way." "Good." Noah nodded firmly. "Kisses help. That's science." Lucas smiled despite his exhaustion. "You're absolutely right, buddy. That's definitely science." He sat with Noah until the boy fell asleep, then went to his own room and collapsed onto the bed without undressing. His phone buzzed. A text from Megan. "Thank you for tonight. For everything. I don't know what I did to deserve you." He typed back, "You don't have to deserve anything. You just have to show up. And so do I." Her response came quickly. "We're really doing this, aren't we? Building something." "Yeah," Lucas wrote. "We really are." He fell asleep with his phone in his hand, and for the first time in a long time his dreams were full of light. The surgery was scheduled for Monday, and Lucas took the day off work to be there. It was a risk. His supervisor had already expressed concerns about his attendance, about his divided attention, about his commitment to the team. But some things mattered more than job security, and Megan's face when she saw him in the waiting room was one of them. "You didn't have to come," she said, but she was already reaching for him, pulling him close. "I know. I wanted to." They waited together through the long hours of surgery. Megan's brother had called, finally, offering vague support and vaguer promises to visit soon. She'd hung up without saying much, her jaw tight with the familiar frustration of carrying a weight that should have been shared. "He's not coming," she said flatly. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I stopped expecting anything from him years ago." "That doesn't mean it doesn't hurt." She looked at him, something flickering in her eyes. "No, it doesn't." The surgery went well as it could for a 70-year-old woman with dementia. The orthopedic surgeon was cautiously optimistic. The care facility was prepared for her return once she recovered, and Megan finally allowed herself to breathe. "Thank you," she said as they walked out of the hospital that evening, the sun setting behind the buildings in streaks of orange and pink, "for being here. For all of it. You don't have to keep thanking me." "I know. I want to." She stopped walking, turned to face him. "Lucas, I need to tell you something." His heart stuttered. "Okay." "These past few weeks, being with you, getting to know Noah, it's been the happiest I've been in years. Maybe ever." She paused, seeming to search for words. "I didn't think I could have this. A relationship that wasn't about sacrifice or obligation or trying to fix someone. I thought that kind of happiness was for other people. Normal people. And now? Now I think maybe I was wrong." She took his hand, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I'm falling for you, Lucas. Really falling. And it scares me to death." Lucas felt his breath catch. "It scares me too." "Good." She laughed shakily. "I'd hate to be the only one terrified." He pulled her close, right there on the sidewalk outside the hospital, and held her while the sun finished setting and the streetlights flickered on around them. "I'm falling, too," he murmured against her hair. "Have been for a while now. What do we do about it? We keep falling, I guess, and hope we land somewhere soft." She laughed again, and this time it sounded like joy. The weeks after the surgery were hard. Megan was at the care facility constantly, managing her mother's recovery, dealing with physical therapists and social workers, and the endless bureaucracy of healthcare. Her work schedule became even more unpredictable as she juggled shifts and sick days and the constant anxiety of her phone ringing with bad news. Lucas did what he could. He brought her coffee when she worked late. He listened when she needed to vent. He took Noah to visit her mother once and watched his son charm the confused elderly woman with stories about Gerald the elephant and the butterfly garden at school. "She smiled," Megan said afterward, her voice wondering. "She hasn't smiled in weeks." Kids have that effect on people. Not just kids. She looked at him with something soft and fragile in her eyes. You have that effect too. But the strain was starting to show. Megan was exhausted, stretched thin between her job and her mother and the new relationship she was trying to nurture. Lucas was drowning at work. His supervisor increasingly pointed about missed deadlines and distracted performances. Even Noah seemed to feel the tension, his words coming slower, his sleep more restless. I feel like I'm failing everyone, Lucas admitted one night, sitting on Megan's couch while she lay with her head in his lap. Work, you, Noah. I'm spread so thin I don't even know who I am anymore. You're not failing anyone. That's not what my boss thinks. Your boss doesn't know what you're dealing with. That's the problem. He ran his fingers through her hair, a gesture that had become automatic. I can't tell him, can't tell anyone. I just have to keep pretending everything's fine when nothing's fine. Megan sat up, turning to face him. Then stop pretending. What? Stop pretending. Tell your boss the truth, that you're a single dad whose child has special needs, that you're in a new relationship with someone who's dealing with a family crisis, that you're human and you're struggling and you need a little grace. She took his hands. People can't help you if they don't know you need help. It's not that simple. Why not? Because Lucas stopped, genuinely unable to articulate the reason. Because he'd been raised to handle things himself. Because asking for help felt like admitting weakness. Because the only person he'd ever truly relied on was Sarah, and she was gone. Because I'm scared, he finally said, that if I admit I can't handle everything, people will think I'm not capable. That I'll lose my job or custody of Noah or... He broke off, shaking his head. I know it sounds crazy. It doesn't sound crazy. It sounds exhausted. Megan leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his. But Lucas, you can't keep going like this. Neither of us can. What's the alternative? We figure it out together. We ask for help when we need it. We stop trying to be perfect and start trying to be real. She pulled back, looking him in the eyes. I know that's terrifying. Believe me, I know. But I'd rather be terrified together than comfortable alone. Lucas thought about that. About all the years he'd spent white-knuckling his way through life, convinced that asking for help was the same as giving up. About how exhausting it had been, how lonely, how ultimately unsustainable. Okay, he said quietly. Okay? Okay. Let's figure it out together. Megan smiled, that real smile, the one that made her whole face light up, and kissed him. We're going to be okay, you know, she said against his lips. How do you know? I don't, but I believe it anyway. And somehow that was enough. Things didn't magically get easier after that conversation, but they got different. Lucas talked to his supervisor, really talked, explaining without detail that he was dealing with family situations that required flexibility. To his surprise, his boss was understanding, offering comp time and remote work options that Lucas hadn't known existed. Megan started delegating more at the care facility, letting the professional staff do their jobs instead of trying to manage every detail herself. It didn't fix her mother's condition, but it gave her room to breathe. They established rhythms. Tuesday dinners at Lucas's apartment, Saturday mornings at the park with Noah, Sunday visits to Megan's mother when she was having good days, nights apart that were harder than they should have been, and nights together that felt like coming home. I want you to meet her, Megan said one evening. They were sitting on Lucas's couch, Noah asleep in his room, the apartment quiet around them. My mom, on a good day, when she's really present. I want her to know you. I'd like that. It might be hard. She gets confused, says things that don't make sense. Sometimes she thinks I'm her sister who died 20 years ago. That's okay. I can handle hard. Megan looked at him, and he could see her weighing his words, testing them for sincerity. You really mean that, don't you? I really do. She was quiet for a moment, then she said, My brother called again, says he might come visit for Thanksgiving. Do you believe him? No. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. He always says that, and something always comes up. Work, the kids, his wife's family obligations. There's always a reason why he can't make it. Lucas pulled her closer, tucking her against his side. His loss. I used to think it was mine, that I was missing something, not being worth the effort. She looked up at him. You've changed that. You make me feel like I'm worth showing up for. You are. You're worth everything. She kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of something that felt like the beginning of forever. And when she pulled back, her eyes were bright. I love you, Lucas. The words hung in the air between them, fragile and momentous. Lucas felt his heart lurch, felt something crack open in his chest that he'd thought was sealed forever. I love you too. Megan smiled, and it was like watching the sun rise. Well then, she said. I guess we're really doing this? I guess we are. They sat there in the quiet, wrapped in each other, and Lucas thought about how strange life was, how grief could lead to love, how broken pieces could find each other and fit together in new patterns, how the worst moment of his life, being pulled over in the rain, nearly falling apart in front of a stranger, had somehow become the first step toward the best thing that had ever happened to him. The road ahead was uncertain. Megan's mother was still sick. Noah still had hard days. Lucas's job still demanded more than he wanted to give. Nothing was fixed. Nothing was easy. Nothing was guaranteed. But for the first time in over 2 years, Lucas wasn't just surviving. He was living. And as he held Megan close in the quiet of his apartment, listening to his son breathe in the next room, he let himself believe that maybe this was what happiness looked like. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of someone willing to struggle alongside you. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but it was starting to feel like the life he was meant to have. The happiness lasted exactly 6 weeks. Lucas would remember that later, would count the days and mark them in his mind like a prisoner scratching lines on a cell wall. 42 days of something that felt almost like normal. 42 days of waking up without the weight of dread pressing against his chest. 42 days of believing that maybe, finally, he had found his way back to solid ground. And then the cracks began to show. It started small, the way disasters always do. A missed phone call here, a canceled dinner there. Megan's responses growing shorter, her laughter more strained, the circles under her eyes darker each time Lucas saw her. He told himself it was normal. Told himself she was tired, stressed, dealing with more than anyone should have to handle alone. But the truth was harder than that, and somewhere deep inside, Lucas already knew it. The call came on a Tuesday night, just after Lucas had finished putting Noah to bed. He was standing in his kitchen, staring at the dishes he should wash, when his phone buzzed with Megan's name. Hey, he said, smiling despite himself. I was just thinking about you. Silence on the other end. Then, her voice, thick, wrong, like she'd been crying for hours. Lucas. What's wrong? Is it your mom? Did something happen? No, yes. She made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. Everything's wrong. Everything's been wrong for weeks, and I don't know how to fix it. Lucas felt ice form in his stomach. Talk to me. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. That's just it, her voice cracked. I don't think we can. The words hung in the air, heavy and final, and Lucas gripped the edge of the counter so hard his knuckles went white. Megan, what are you saying? I'm saying I can't do this anymore. I'm saying I'm drowning, Lucas, and every time I try to come up for air, something else pulls me back under. My mom is getting worse. They found an infection at the surgery site. She's back in the hospital, and they don't know if she's going to make it this time. I'm so sorry, but I can help. Let me help. That's the problem. The words exploded out of her. You keep trying to help, and I keep letting you, and it's not fair. None of this is fair to you. I don't care about fair. Well, I do. She was crying now. He could hear it in her breathing, in the spaces between her words. I care that you've put your whole life on hold for me. I care that Noah is getting attached to someone who might not be able to stick around. I care that I'm dragging you into my disaster of a life when you deserve so much better. Lucas closed his eyes, pressed his free hand against his forehead. You don't get to decide what I deserve. Someone has to, because clearly you're not going to protect yourself. A bitter laugh. You're so desperate to save everyone, Lucas, to fix everything. But some things can't be fixed. Some people are just... Her voice broke. Some people are just too broken. You're not broken. Yes, I am. I've been broken since my dad died. since my mom started forgetting who I was, since my brother decided I wasn't worth showing up for. And for a while, with you, I thought maybe I could be something else, something better. But I was wrong. Megan, I can't do this, she said again, and this time her voice was hollow, empty. I can't be what you need, what Noah needs. I can't be a mother to someone else's child when I'm barely holding my own life together. It's not fair to ask me to try. The words hit Lucas like a physical blow. For a moment he couldn't breathe. No one's asking you to be his mother, he said carefully. No one's asking you to be anything you're not ready to be. But you are. Even if you don't say it, even if you don't realize it, you're asking. Every time you look at me like I'm something precious, every time Noah says my name like I matter, you're asking me to be someone I don't know how to be, and I'm terrified that I'm going to fail, that I'm going to hurt both of you, and I couldn't live with myself if I did. Lucas wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was wrong, that fear wasn't a reason to run, that the only way to fail was to stop trying. But he could hear the exhaustion in her voice, the months of accumulated pressure finally finding release, and he knew that nothing he said right now would reach her. "What do you want me to do?" he asked quietly. Silence. Then, barely a whisper, "I want you to let me go." The kitchen felt too small, too bright, too solid around him. Lucas stared at the dishes in the sink, a coffee mug with a chip in the handle, a bowl with dried cereal clinging to the sides, and wondered how the world could contain such ordinary things when everything was falling apart. "I don't know if I can do that." "Please," her voice cracked again. "Please, Lucas, I need time. I need space. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be someone's partner or someone's daughter or someone's caretaker. I've never had that. I've never been just Megan, and I think I need to find her before I can give anything to anyone else." Lucas closed his eyes against the sting of tears. He understood what she was saying. He even respected it in a painful, grudging way. But understanding didn't make it hurt any less. "How much time?" "I don't know." "Will you call me? Let me know how you're doing?" "I don't know that either." She took a shaky breath. I think a clean break is better for both of us." "Megan, I'm sorry." She was crying again, openly now. "I'm so sorry, Lucas. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted any of this. I know. Take care of Noah. Tell him—" She stopped, seemed to struggle for words. "Tell him I said goodbye. Tell him it wasn't his fault. Tell him I'll always remember the way he made Sergeant purr." Lucas felt something inside him shatter. "Megan, please don't do this. I have to. I'm sorry. I have to." And then she was gone. The call ended and Lucas was standing alone in his kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, listening to dead air. He didn't move for a long time. The days that followed were a blur of grief and confusion. Lucas went through the motions, getting Noah to school, showing up for work, maintaining the appearance of normalcy while everything inside him crumbled. He didn't tell anyone what had happened, didn't know how to explain it, didn't want to see the pity in their eyes. Noah noticed, though. Kids always notice. "Daddy, when is Miss Megan coming to visit?" Lucas knelt down to his son's level, forcing his face into something that resembled calm. "Miss Megan is going to be busy for a while, buddy. She has some things she needs to take care of." "Like her mommy?" "Yes, like her mommy." Noah processed this, his small face scrunched in concentration. "Is she coming back?" The question cut deeper than Lucas expected. He wanted to lie, wanted to promise his son that everything would be fine, that Megan would walk through the door any day now, that the fragile family they'd started building wasn't already falling apart. But he'd made a promise to himself long ago, after Sarah died. He would never lie to Noah about the important things. "I don't know, buddy. I hope so." Noah was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Gerald thinks she'll come back. Gerald says she's just scared, like when I don't want to talk sometimes." Lucas pulled his son into a hug, holding him tight enough to anchor them both. "Gerald is very wise." "I know. That's why he's my best animal friend." Despite everything, Lucas felt the ghost of a smile cross his face. Children had a way of finding light in the darkest places. He texted Megan once, a week after the phone call. Just 3 words, "I'm here, always." She didn't respond. He texted her again a week after that. "Your mom, how is she?" "I'm thinking of you." Nothing. After the 3rd unanswered message, Lucas stopped trying. Not because he'd given up. He didn't think he could give up on her even if he wanted to, but because he understood that some doors needed to stay closed until the person on the other side was ready to open them. Work became his refuge, the way it had been in the months after Sarah's death. He threw himself into projects with a desperate energy, staying late, taking on extra assignments, doing anything to keep his mind occupied. His supervisor noticed the change, praised his renewed focus, offered hints about a possible promotion if he kept up the good work. Lucas smiled and nodded and felt nothing. The real fight, the one that mattered, was happening at home. Noah had started regressing, the words coming harder again, the silences longer, the look in his eyes more distant. Dr. Patterson increased their sessions to twice a week, but even she seemed concerned. "He's experienced another loss," she told Lucas one afternoon while Noah played in the next room. Even though Megan wasn't a parental figure for very long, children form attachments quickly. The sudden absence is traumatic. "What do I do?" "The same thing you've been doing. Be present. Be patient. Let him process at his own pace." She paused. "And Lucas, take care of yourself too. You can't pour from an empty cup." Easy to say, harder to do. The nights were the worst. Lucas would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, remembering the weight of Megan's head on his chest, the sound of her laugh, the way she looked at him like he was something worth keeping. The memories played on loop, unbidden and relentless, and he couldn't decide if they were a comfort or a curse. He started wearing his wedding ring again. It was a conscious choice, made one morning when the absence of weight on his finger felt wrong in a new way. He told himself it was for protection, a signal to the world that he wasn't available, that he'd already given his heart away twice and didn't have enough left to risk again. But the truth was simpler. The ring was familiar. It was grief he understood, loss he knew how to carry, easier somehow than the fresh wound of Megan's absence. Mrs. Chen noticed the ring when Lucas dropped Noah off one Saturday morning. "Ah," she said, her eyes sharp despite her age, "you are wearing it again." "Yes." "The police officer, she is gone?" Lucas didn't ask how she knew. Mrs. Chen had lived in the building for 40 years. Nothing escaped her attention. She needed space, time to figure things out. Mrs. Chen made a sound that might have been sympathy or might have been disapproval. "And you? What do you need?" "I don't know anymore." She studied him for a long moment, then reached up to pat his cheek with her weathered hand. "You know, you were just afraid to want it." She disappeared into her apartment with Noah before Lucas could respond, leaving him standing in the hallway with a truth he wasn't ready to face. 3 weeks after Megan's phone call, Lucas's phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. He almost didn't answer. Telemarketers had been relentless lately, but something made him pick up. "Is this Lucas Hale?" The voice was male, professional, vaguely familiar. "Yes. Who's this?" "My name is James Brooks. I'm Megan's brother." Lucas felt the world tilt slightly. "Is she okay? Did something happen?" James hesitated. "She's not doing well. Our mother passed away 3 days ago. The funeral is tomorrow. Megan hasn't left the house since it happened." Lucas closed his eyes. "I'm so sorry." "She doesn't know I'm calling you. She'd probably kill me if she found out." Another pause. "But I've never seen her like this. She won't talk to anyone, won't eat, won't—" His voice cracked slightly. "I know I haven't been there for her. I know I've failed her in every way a brother can fail a sister. But I thought if anyone could reach her." "Where is she?" James gave him the address. Megan's apartment, the same place where Lucas had had dinner with her and Noah, where Sergeant the cat had fallen asleep on his son's lap, where everything had seemed possible. "Thank you for calling," Lucas said. "Are you going to go?" "Yes." "Good." James sounded relieved. "I'm flying out tonight. I should have been here a week ago, but..." He stopped, and Lucas heard the weight of guilt in his silence. It doesn't matter. I'm coming now. Maybe it's not too late. It's never too late, Lucas said, and hoped it was true. He called Mrs. Chen, explained there was an emergency, arranged for Noah to stay overnight. His son watched him with those knowing eyes as he packed a bag. You're going to find Miss Megan, aren't you? Lucas knelt down, brushed Noah's hair back from his forehead. Yes, buddy. I'm going to try. Good. Noah nodded firmly. Tell her Gerald misses her. Tell her we all miss her. I will. And Daddy? Noah's small hand found Lucas's, squeezing tight. Don't let her stay scared. Scared is lonely. Lucas thought about all the times his son had gone silent, retreating into himself where no one could reach him. He thought about the courage it took to come back, to choose words when silence felt safer, to trust that the world would be gentle. You're very brave. You know that? I know. Noah smiled. You're brave too. That's why we're a team. Lucas held his son for a long moment, drawing strength from his small, steady presence. Then he kissed Noah's forehead, said goodbye to Mrs. Chen, and drove across town toward whatever waited for him at Megan's apartment. The building looked different in the dark. Lucas sat in his car for a long time, staring up at the window he knew was hers. The light was on, a soft yellow glow against the darkness, but there was no movement visible through the curtains. He thought about what he would say. Rehearsed speeches in his head, comforting words, declarations of love, promises that everything would be okay. But every version felt hollow, insufficient for the magnitude of what she was going through. In the end, he stopped thinking and just went. The buzzer felt cold under his finger. He pressed it once, twice, 3 times. No response. He was about to try again when a voice crackled through the intercom. Go away. Megan, it's Lucas. Silence. Then, who told you I was here? Does it matter? Yes, it matters. Her voice was flat, drained of everything that had once made it warm. I told you I needed space. I know, and I've given you space. But your mother died, and you're alone, and I couldn't... He stopped, pressed his forehead against the cold metal of the intercom. I couldn't just do nothing. What do you want from me, Lucas? Nothing. I don't want anything from you. He closed his eyes. I just want to be here. You don't have to talk to me, you don't have to let me in, but I needed you to know that someone cares, that someone is here, even if you don't want them to be. The intercom went silent. Lucas stood there in the dark, waiting, wondering if he should leave, wondering if coming here had been a mistake. Then the door buzzed open. Megan's apartment was a disaster. It was the first thing Lucas noticed when she opened the door. The contrast between the warm, lived-in space he remembered and this chaos of unwashed dishes, scattered papers, and half-empty takeout containers. Sargent sat on the couch, looking at Lucas with what seemed like relief. Megan herself looked worse. She was wearing the same clothes she'd worn 3 weeks ago, Lucas realized. The faded blue sweater, now stained and wrinkled, over sweatpants that had seen better days. Her hair hung lank around her face, and her eyes were red-rimmed, hollow, like something essential had been scooped out of her. Don't, she said when she saw his expression. Don't look at me like that. Like what? Like I'm broken. Like you need to fix me. Lucas stepped inside, closed the door behind him. I'm not here to fix you. Then why are you here? Because I love you. Because your mother died and you're hurting, and you shouldn't have to hurt alone. He moved toward her, slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. And because Noah wanted me to tell you that Gerald misses you. Something flickered in Megan's eyes at the mention of Noah's name. Just a flash, quickly suppressed, but Lucas saw it. You shouldn't have come, she said, but her voice wavered. Probably not. I'm a mess. I know. I can't. I don't know how to do this, how to grieve, how to feel anything except this. She pressed her hands against her chest like she was trying to hold something in. This hollowness, like everything that made me a person, just disappeared. I know that feeling. I felt it for 2 years after Sarah died. Megan looked at him, really looked, for the first time since he'd arrived. How did you survive it? I didn't. Not at first. Lucas took another step closer. I just existed. Went through the motions. Pretended to be alive until I started to believe it. He paused. And then I met you. And you showed me that survival wasn't enough, that there was something more waiting if I was brave enough to reach for it. I'm not brave. Yes, you are. You're the bravest person I know. Megan shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. I ran away from you. I ran away from the best thing that ever happened to me because I was scared. That's not brave. Sure it is. Lucas finally closed the distance between them, reaching out to take her hands. Being scared and doing it anyway, that's the definition of courage. You were scared, so you did what you thought you had to do to protect yourself, to protect me and Noah. That's not weakness. That's love. It doesn't feel like love. It feels like failure. Sometimes they feel the same. He squeezed her hands gently. But here's the thing about failure, Megan. It's not final. Not unless you let it be. She stared at him, and he watched the war play out across her face. The same war he'd seen before, hope fighting against fear, the desperate desire to believe fighting against years of disappointment. My mother is dead, she said, the words coming out small and broken. She's dead, and I never got to say goodbye. The last time I saw her, really saw her, when she actually knew who I was months ago, and I wasted it. I was stressed and distracted, and I barely paid attention, and now, her voice cracked. Now she's gone, and I'll never get that time back. Lucas pulled her into his arms. She resisted for just a moment, her body stiff, her hands pushing against his chest, and then she collapsed against him, her whole weight sagging as the grief finally found release. She cried like he'd never heard anyone cry before, great racking sobs that seemed to tear their way up from somewhere deep inside her. He held her through all of it. Didn't try to talk, didn't try to comfort, just let her fall apart in his arms while the apartment grew quiet around them. They stood like that for a long time. Finally, when the sobs had subsided to shaky breaths and occasional hiccups, Megan pulled back just enough to look at him. I'm sorry, she whispered, for pushing you away, for the things I said, don't apologize. I need to. I was scared and overwhelmed, and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair. Fair doesn't matter, not between us. Lucas brushed the hair back from her face, tucked it behind her ear. All that matters is what comes next. What if I don't know what comes next? Then we figure it out together. One day at a time. She was quiet for a moment, studying his face like she was searching for something. You really mean that, don't you? Even after everything. Even after everything. Why? It was the same question she'd asked him before, in the hospital waiting room, when she couldn't understand why anyone would choose to step into her disaster of a life. And Lucas gave her the same answer, because some truths bear repeating. Because I love you, because I choose you, because some things are worth fighting for even when they're hard, especially when they're hard. Megan's face crumpled again, but this time the tears looked different, softer, like something was healing instead of breaking. I love you too, she said. I never stopped. I know. I was so scared. I know. I thought if I let you in, if I let myself need you, I know. He kissed her forehead, gentle and warm. I know, Megan, and it's okay. We're okay. She leaned into him, and for a long moment, they just breathed together. The apartment was quiet around them, the chaos of grief fading into something that felt almost like peace. Stay, she said finally. Please. I don't want to be alone tonight. I'm not going anywhere. They ended up on the couch, Megan curled against Lucas's side, Sargent wedged between their feet. Lucas stayed awake long after she fell asleep, watching the rise and fall of her breathing, feeling the warmth of her body against his. He thought about everything that had led them here. The speeding ticket in the rain, the torn citation, the ice cream in the park, and the dinners and the late-night phone calls, the joy and the fear, and the terrible, wonderful vulnerability of letting someone see you at your worst. He thought about Sarah, and for the first time the thought didn't hurt. It felt instead like a blessing, like she had guided him here somehow, led him to this broken, beautiful woman who needed someone to love her the way she deserved. Take care of her, he imagined Sarah saying. Don't mess this up. I'll try, he promised. I'll try. Sargent purred in his sleep, and outside the window the city settled into the quiet of late night, and Lucas finally let himself close his eyes. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The funeral was small and simple. Lucas stood beside Megan in the cemetery, holding her hand while the minister spoke words that seemed inadequate for the magnitude of loss. James had arrived the night before, looking haggard and guilty, and now he stood on Megan's other side, a stranger in every way that mattered. There were others too, colleagues from the care facility, a few distant relatives, neighbors who remembered Mrs. Brooks from before the dementia had stolen her away. Not many. Megan's mother had outlived most of her friends. Megan didn't cry. She stood straight and still throughout the service, her face a mask of composure that Lucas recognized as survival. The grief would come later, in waves and crashes, and he would be there for all of it. When it was over, when the minister had said the final words and the mourners had drifted away, Megan stood alone in front of the grave. I should say something, she said. I've been trying to think of what to say, and I can't. Her voice broke slightly. I can't find the words. You don't have to say anything. But I should. She was my mother. She raised me, loved me, sacrificed for me. And I spent the last years of her life watching her disappear, and now she's gone, and I never... She stopped, pressed her hand against her mouth. Lucas stepped closer, put his arm around her. She knew you loved her. Did she? Some days she didn't even know who I was. That doesn't matter. Love isn't about recognition. It's about presence. He turned her gently to face the grave. You showed up, Megan. Every day, every crisis, every time she needed you, you showed up. That's love. That's what she felt, even when she couldn't name it. Megan was quiet for a long moment. Then she knelt down, touched the fresh earth covering her mother's casket. I'm sorry I wasn't better, she whispered. I'm sorry I got impatient and frustrated and tired. I'm sorry I sometimes wished it would just be over. Her voice cracked. But I'm glad I was there. I'm glad you weren't alone at the end, and I promise... She took a shaky breath. I promise I'll try to be happy. I know that's what you wanted for me. She stayed there for a while, one hand on the ground, head bowed. Lucas watched her from a few feet away, giving her the privacy she needed. When she finally stood, her face was calmer. Still sad, still grieving, but something had shifted. Some weight had been released. Okay, she said. I'm ready. Ready for what? She looked at him, and for the first time in weeks he saw something like hope in her eyes. Ready to try again. The days after the funeral were fragile, tentative things. Megan started to eat again, small meals at first, sometimes just crackers and tea, but it was something. She showered, changed her clothes, let Lucas help her clean the apartment while Sargent watched with feline approval. James stayed for 3 days, then flew back to Seattle with promises to visit more often. Megan watched him go with something that looked less like anger and more like acceptance. He's trying, she said after his car had disappeared down the street. In his own way, he's trying. That's all anyone can do. She turned to look at Lucas, studying his face with an intensity that made him want to squirm. I want to see Noah. Lucas felt his heart lift. Yeah? Yeah, I miss him. I miss his stories and his drawings and the way he makes Gerald talk in different voices. She paused. I miss being part of something bigger than myself. He misses you too. He asks about you every day. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I hurt him. He's resilient. Kids bounce back. Lucas took her hand. But he'd bounce higher if he knew you were coming back. They drove to Lucas's apartment together that evening. Noah was in the living room when they arrived, sitting on the floor with Gerald, making the elephant dance to music only he could hear. He looked up at the sound of the door, and Lucas watched his son's face transform from curiosity to recognition to pure, incandescent joy. Miss Megan! He launched himself across the room, and Megan caught him, lifting him up into a hug that looked like it might never end. Hi, sweetheart, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I missed you so much. I missed you too. Gerald missed you. Daddy missed you, but he pretended not to because grown-ups are weird about feelings. Megan laughed, a real laugh, surprised out of her, and looked at Lucas over Noah's head. Is that so? I have no idea what he's talking about. Uh-huh. She smiled, and it was like watching the sun come out after a storm. Sure you don't. Noah squirmed in her arms, demanding to be set down so he could show her all the drawings he'd made while she was gone. There were dozens of them. Megan in her police uniform, Megan with Sergeant, Megan and Lucas and Noah and Gerald all together in what appeared to be a rocket ship. That's us going to the moon, Noah explained seriously. Because you said your mommy is a star now, like my mommy, and I thought maybe they're on the same star and we could visit. Megan's eyes filled with tears, and she pulled Noah into another hug. That's the most beautiful thing anyone has ever said to me. Gerald helped me think of it. Then Gerald is a genius. Lucas stood in the doorway of the living room, watching them, and felt something click into place in his chest. This was what he'd been missing. Not just romance, not just companionship, but this, a family, messy and imperfect, and built from broken pieces that somehow fit together. He thought about Sarah again, and this time he could almost hear her voice. Look at what you built, she seemed to say. Look at what we made possible. I wish you were here, he thought back. I wish you could see him, see us. I am, she answered. I always am. Lucas wiped his eyes quickly before Noah or Megan could notice and went to join his family. That night, after Noah had fallen asleep with Gerald tucked under his arm, Lucas and Megan sat on the couch in the quiet. I'm scared, she said softly. I'm still so scared. I know, me too. What if I hurt you again? What if I can't handle the pressure and I run? Lucas considered the question seriously. Then you run, and I wait, and eventually you come back, or you don't, and I figure out how to survive that too. He took her hand. But here's what I've learned, Megan. The fear doesn't go away. Not ever. It just gets smaller, quieter, easier to live with. And the only way to make it smaller is to keep choosing the thing that scares you. You make it sound simple. It is simple. It's just not easy. He turned to face her fully. I choose you. Every day, every complication, every hard conversation, I choose you. And all I'm asking is that you choose me back. Not perfectly, not fearlessly, just consistently, one day at a time. Megan was quiet for a long moment. Then she leaned forward and kissed him, soft, slow, full of everything she couldn't say out loud. One day at a time, she repeated against his lips. I can do that. Then we're going to be okay. You think so? Lucas thought about everything they'd been through, the traffic stop in the rain, the hospital waiting rooms, the grief and the fear and the terrible, wonderful vulnerability of learning to love again. Yeah, he said. I really do. Megan smiled and curled against his side, and the night settled around them like a blanket. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. The world would keep spinning, keep throwing obstacles in their path, keep testing their fragile new beginning. Lucas knew that. He wasn't naive enough to think that love alone could solve everything. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid of tomorrow. He had his son. He had this woman. He had a chance at something real, something lasting, something worth fighting for. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything. The peace they had found was real, but it was also fragile, and both of them knew it. In the weeks following their reconciliation, Lucas and Megan moved carefully around each other, like two people learning to dance after a long time apart. The old rhythms were still there, the late-night conversations, the shared laughter, the way their bodies fit together on the couch while Noah slept. But there was a new awareness underneath it all. A recognition that what they had could be lost, and that protecting it would require more than just love. It would require work. Megan returned to her job 3 weeks after her mother's funeral, easing back into patrol shifts that left her exhausted but strangely grateful. The routine helped, she told Lucas. The structure. The reminder that the world kept spinning even when your own had stopped. I forgot how much I need this, she said one evening, still in her uniform, badge glinting under the kitchen light. The job, the purpose, something bigger than my own problems. I'm glad you have it back. Me too. She paused, something flickering across her face. But it's going to be hard. The shifts, the unpredictability. I don't want you to feel like I'm disappearing again. Lucas crossed the kitchen to where she stood, pulled her into his arms despite the stiff fabric of her uniform. You're not disappearing. You're living. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Disappearing is what you did before, cutting off, running away, pushing me out. This is just you having a life, having commitments outside of us. I can handle that. He pulled back enough to look at her. I want you to have that. I don't want to be your whole world, Megan. I want to be part of your world. A good part, but not the only part. She studied his face, searching for something. Most men would want to be everything. Most men haven't lost what I've lost. I know what happens when you build your entire life around one person. His voice softened. When Sarah died, I had nothing left. Nothing except Noah. I can't do that again. Can't be someone's everything. Can't make someone my everything. It's not healthy. For either of us. Megan was quiet for a moment. Then she said, my therapist used to tell me the same thing, back when I could afford one. Maybe you should find another one. Maybe. She smiled slightly. Maybe we both should. It was a conversation they would have again in different forms over the following months. The ongoing negotiation of two wounded people trying to build something healthy from the wreckage of their pasts. Some days it was easy. The natural chemistry between them, the way their rhythms aligned, the simple pleasure of sharing space with someone who understood you. Those things carried them through the mundane challenges. Who was cooking dinner? Who was picking up Noah from school? Who had remembered to buy milk? Other days were harder. Megan's grief came in waves, unpredictable and overwhelming. Some mornings she would wake up crying, unable to explain what had triggered it, unable to do anything except let Lucas hold her while the sorrow worked its way through. Some nights she couldn't sleep at all, lying awake with the weight of everything she'd lost pressing down on her chest. I keep expecting to feel better, she told Lucas one of those sleepless nights, her voice rough with exhaustion. Everyone says it gets easier, but it doesn't feel easier. It feels like I'm just learning to carry something heavier. That's what grief is, Lucas said softly. The weight doesn't get lighter. You just get stronger. What if I don't want to be stronger? What if I just want it to stop? Then you rest. You let me carry some of it for a while, and when you're ready, you pick it up again. She turned to look at him in the darkness, her eyes reflecting the faint light from the window. How did you survive it? After Sarah? It was a question she'd asked before, in different ways, at different moments. And Lucas gave her a different answer each time, because grief wasn't one thing. It was 1,000 things, constantly shifting, and the survival strategies that worked one day might fail the next. Noah, he said this time. I survived because of Noah. Because he needed me to get up in the morning, needed me to make breakfast and pack lunches and pretend to be a functioning human being. Some days the only thing that got me out of bed was knowing that if I didn't, he would be alone. And that was enough? It had to be. There wasn't anything else. He paused, considering. But it wasn't really living. It was just existing, going through the motions. I told myself I was doing it for him, but I think part of me was just waiting to die. Not actively. I never thought about hurting myself or anything like that. I just didn't see the point in building anything new, in hoping for anything, in wanting. What changed? Lucas smiled in the darkness. You. You changed everything. Megan was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I'm glad I pulled you over. Me too. Even if you did scare the hell out of me. I was pretty intimidating. You were terrifying. All that authority and competence. I was convinced you were going to arrest me for being a mess. She laughed, a real laugh, surprised out of her, and the sound was like sunlight breaking through clouds. You weren't that bad. I was wearing yesterday's shirt. I hadn't shaved in 3 days, and I'm pretty sure there was oatmeal in my hair. Okay, you were pretty bad. She laughed again, and then she kissed him, and for a little while, the grief receded enough to let something else through. These were the moments Lucas lived for now, the small victories, the brief reprieves, the reminder that even in the midst of pain there was still joy to be found. Spring arrived slowly, tentatively, like it wasn't sure it was welcome. The The trees along Lucas's street began to bud, small green promises against the gray sky. The days grew longer, the air warmer, and Noah seemed to absorb the seasonal shift into his very being. He talked more, laughed more, ventured further from Lucas's side when they went to the park. Dr. Patterson says he's made remarkable progress, Lucas told Megan one afternoon, watching their son, and that was how he thought of Noah now, as theirs, even if the legalities hadn't caught up to his heart. Attempt the monkey bars for the 100th time. She says the stability has been good for him. The stability, Megan smiled slightly. Is that what we're calling this? What would you call it? I don't know. Controlled chaos? Organized disaster? She leaned against him, her shoulder pressing into his. Whatever it is, I'm glad it's helping him. It's helping all of us. They watched Noah make it across the bars, drop to the ground with a triumphant shout, and immediately start climbing up to do it again. I've been thinking, Megan said carefully. That sounds dangerous. Probably. She took a breath. My lease is up at the end of next month. The apartment, it's too quiet now without my mom to worry about, without the emergency calls. I keep waking up in the middle of the night expecting my phone to ring, and when it doesn't, I feel like I'm forgetting something important. Lucas felt his heart rate increase, uncertain where this was going. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that I spend most of my time at your place anyway. I'm thinking that Noah has started calling my apartment Megan's old house, even though I technically still live there. I'm thinking... She stopped, turned to face him. I'm thinking that maybe it's time to make this official. If you want that. If you're ready. Lucas stared at her. Are you asking to move in with me? I'm asking if you'd consider it. If it's not too fast, too much, too... He kissed her before she could finish the sentence. It was a long kiss, thorough and deliberate, and when he finally pulled back, Megan's cheeks were flushed and her eyes were bright. I'll take that as a yes, she said. That's a yes. That's a definitely, absolutely, without question, yes. Even though my schedule is insane and I'll probably wake you up at weird hours and sergeant sheds everywhere. Even though all of those things. Lucas cupped her face in his hands. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want Noah to see you at the breakfast table. I want to build a life with you, a real life, not this half-in, half-out thing we've been doing. I want all of it. Megan's eyes filled with tears. Happy ones, Lucas could tell by now. I want that too. Then let's do it. They told Noah that evening, sitting around the dinner table with spaghetti and garlic bread and the kind of nervous energy that accompanies big announcements. Buddy, we have something to tell you, Lucas began. Noah looked up from his spaghetti, sauce smeared across his chin. Is it about Miss Megan moving in? Because I already know that. Lucas exchanged a glance with Megan. How do you already know that? Because her toothbrush is in our bathroom and her clothes are in your closet and Sergeant has his own food bowl in the kitchen. Noah shrugged. That's what moving in means, right? Megan laughed, that surprised laugh that Lucas loved. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. Gerald says it's my best quality. Gerald is absolutely right. Noah considered this for a moment, then looked at Lucas with sudden seriousness. Does this mean Miss Megan is going to be my mom now? The question hung in the air, heavy with implications neither adult had fully prepared for. Lucas felt Megan tense beside him, felt the weight of the moment pressing down on both of them. What do you think about that, buddy? Lucas asked carefully. How would you feel if Miss Megan was more like family? Noah was quiet for a long time, long enough that Lucas started to worry. Then the boy said, in a small voice, My first mommy is still my mommy, right? Even if she's a star now? Of course. Lucas reached across the table to take his son's hand. She'll always be your mommy. Nothing can ever change that. Okay. Noah nodded, apparently satisfied. Then I think it would be okay if Miss Megan was my other mommy, like how some kids have two grandmas. I could have two mommies, one who's a star and one who's here. Megan made a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Would that be okay with you, Noah? Calling me your other mommy? I think so. Noah tilted his head, considering. But maybe I should ask Gerald first. He's better at feelings than me. He slid out of his chair, retrieved Gerald from the living room, and held a whispered conference with the stuffed elephant that lasted several minutes. Lucas and Megan watched, hands clasped under the table, neither of them breathing. Finally, Noah returned to his seat, Gerald tucked under his arm. Gerald says it's a good idea, he announced. He says my first mommy would want me to have someone to love me here on Earth, not just from the stars. And he says Miss Megan makes good spaghetti, which is important. Megan laughed through her tears. I'm glad Gerald approves of my spaghetti. Me too. Noah returned to his dinner, apparently considering the matter settled. Can I have more garlic bread? That night after Noah was asleep, Lucas found Megan sitting on the couch, staring at nothing. Sargent was in her lap, purring contentedly, but her hands weren't moving to pet him. Hey. Lucas sat down beside her. You okay? I don't know. Her voice was thick. He called me his other mommy. That 5-year-old boy who barely knew me 6 months ago looked at me and decided I was worth that. How am I supposed to live up to that, Lucas? How am I supposed to be worthy of that? You don't have to be worthy of it. You just have to show up. But what if I fail? What if I mess him up? What if... Megan. Lucas took her hand, stilling her spiraling thoughts. Listen to me. There is no perfect way to do this. There's no manual, no checklist, no guaranteed path to getting it right. All any of us can do is love each other as best we can and try to learn from our mistakes. What if my best isn't good enough? Then you do better. That's all anyone can ask. He squeezed her hands. You're not replacing Sarah. You're not erasing her. You're adding to what Noah has, not taking anything away. He knows that. I know that. And someday, when you believe it too, this will feel less terrifying. Megan was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I never thought I'd have this. A family, a child, someone who needed me in a way that wasn't about sickness or obligation. She looked up at him, her eyes wet. I don't know how to do this, Lucas, but I want to learn. I want to try. That's all I'm asking. That's all Noah's asking. He pulled her close, careful not to disturb Sargent. Just try. One day at a time. She leaned into him, and he felt her breath even out, her body relax. Outside the window, the city hummed with its usual night sounds, traffic and sirens, and the distant bark of a dog. I love you, she murmured against his chest. I love you too. Even when I'm scared? Especially when you're scared. She was quiet again, and for a while, they just sat together, breathing in sync, letting the night settle around them. I should probably tell my brother, Megan said eventually, about moving in, about all of this. How do you think he'll react? I have no idea. We've talked more in the past few months than we did in the past 5 years, but it still feels like we're strangers. She sighed. He's trying, though. I'll give him that. That's more than he was doing before. True. She was quiet for a moment. Maybe I should invite him to visit. Meet you and Noah properly. See what this life I'm building actually looks like. Would that be good for you? I don't know, but I think it might be necessary. She pulled back to look at him. I've spent so long being angry at him for not being there, but maybe part of that is my fault too. Maybe I never made it easy for him to come back. That's a very mature perspective. I've been working on it. She smiled slightly. The grief counselor I've been seeing, she's been helping me see things differently. Understanding that holding on to anger doesn't hurt the person you're angry at. It just hurts you. Lucas felt a warmth spread through his chest. I'm proud of you. For what? Going to therapy like a functional adult? For trying, for being willing to grow, for not letting the hard stuff make you bitter. He kissed her forehead. You're doing the work, Megan. That's not nothing. It feels like nothing sometimes. Like I'm just going through the motions, saying the right words, pretending to be okay. Sometimes that's how it starts. You pretend until it's real. He smiled. I should know. I pretended for 2 years before I met you. And now? Now I don't have to pretend anymore. Megan moved in the following month. It was chaotic and messy and exactly what Lucas had expected. Boxes everywhere, furniture that didn't quite fit, Sargent exploring every corner of the apartment with suspicious intensity. Noah helped unpack by removing items from boxes and immediately losing interest, leaving a trail of random objects throughout the apartment like breadcrumbs in a fairy tale. I think your measuring cups are in the bathroom, Lucas told Megan at one point, and your ties are in the kitchen. We're even. They weren't even? Not really, but they were learning. Learning the small negotiations of shared space, learning each other's rhythms and habits and quirks, learning what compromise looked like in the daily texture of life. It wasn't always easy. Megan's shifts were unpredictable, and there were nights when Lucas fell asleep alone, not knowing when she'd be home. There were mornings when she was so exhausted from a difficult call that she could barely speak, and Lucas had to navigate breakfast and school drop-off with nothing but coffee and determination. There were arguments too, real ones, the kind that came from two stubborn people trying to figure out how to fit their lives together. Arguments about money and household chores and parenting decisions. Arguments about the ring Lucas still kept in his dresser drawer, unwilling to throw away even though he no longer wore it. Arguments about the future and what they wanted and how to get there. But there were also morning kisses and inside jokes and the quiet comfort of someone waiting when you came home. There were family dinners and weekend trips to the park and lazy Sundays with nowhere to be and nothing to do except be together. There was Noah, thriving in a way Lucas had only dared to hope for, his words coming easier now, his laughter coming more often. He's doing so well, Dr. Patterson told Lucas at their monthly check-in. The progress he's made in the past few months is remarkable. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. What they were doing was loving him. Simply, consistently, without conditions or reservations. It wasn't magic, but it worked. I told my teacher about my two mommies today, Noah announced one evening at dinner. Lucas and Megan exchanged a glance. What did you tell her, buddy? That one is a star and one is a police officer, and that my star mommy makes the sun rise and my police officer mommy makes the bad guys go away. He shrugged. Mrs. Henderson said that was a beautiful way to think about it. Did any of the other kids say anything? Tommy said it was weird that I have two mommies. I told him it wasn't weird. It was special, and then he said maybe he should get two mommies too. Noah grinned. I told him he'd have to find his own. Megan laughed, but Lucas could see the emotion she was hiding. After dinner, when Noah was in his room playing, she turned to him with tears in her eyes. He called me his police officer mommy, to his teacher, to his classmates, like it was the most natural thing in the world. It is the most natural thing in the world, to him. I don't deserve this. That's not how love works, Megan. You don't earn it. You don't deserve it. It just is. He pulled her close. That little boy loves you. I love you. You're part of this family now, whether you feel worthy of it or not. She held on to him like he was the only solid thing in a shifting world. I'm trying to believe it. I know, and someday you will. Summer came with heat and light, and the particular energy of long days and short nights. Lucas took 2 weeks off work, the first real vacation he'd had since Sarah died, and they drove to the coast, all three of them plus Sargent in his carrier, staying in a rented cottage that overlooked the ocean. Noah had never seen the beach before. Lucas watched his son encounter the vast expanse of water and sand with something like awe, the way the boy approached the waves cautiously at first, then with increasing bravery until he was shrieking with delight every time the surf touched his toes. He looks so happy, Megan said, standing beside Lucas on the sand. He is happy. We all are. She leaned into him, her head on his shoulder. I didn't know it could feel like this. I didn't know life could feel this good. Neither did I. Lucas wrapped his arm around her. Not anymore. I thought that part of me died with Sarah. What changed? You, this, the choice to try again, even when it was terrifying. He paused, watching Noah build a sandcastle that kept collapsing against the tide. Sarah used to say that happiness wasn't a destination, it was a direction. I never really understood what she meant until now. What do you think she meant? That you don't arrive at happiness and stay there forever. It's not a place you reach and then stop moving. It's a direction you choose over and over every day. Sometimes you veer off course, sometimes you get lost. But as long as you keep choosing that direction, keep pointing yourself toward joy instead of despair, that's happiness. That's all it is. Megan was quiet for a moment, then she said, I think Sarah was very wise. She was. Wiser than me most of the time. I wish I could have known her. Me too. Lucas smiled slightly. She would have liked you. You're both stubborn as hell. Megan laughed. I'll take that as a compliment. It is one. They stood together in the sunshine, watching Noah play, and Lucas felt something settle in his chest. A sense of rightness, of peace, of being exactly where he was supposed to be. The past was still there. Sarah's memory, the grief that would never fully fade, the scars that both he and Megan carried, but the past didn't define them anymore. It was part of them, woven into who they were, but it didn't control them. They had chosen a direction, and they were going to keep choosing it together for as long as they could. Daddy! Megan, come look! Noah was waving frantically from the water's edge, pointing at something in the sand. They walked over to find him crouched beside a tide pool, staring in wonder at a tiny crab that had gotten trapped when the water receded. Can we keep it? Noah asked. Can it be our beach pet? The ocean is his home, buddy. He'd miss his family if we took him away. Noah considered this seriously. But what if his family is looking for him? What if he's lost? Then he'll find his way back when the tide comes in. The ocean always brings everyone home eventually. Noah nodded, apparently satisfied with this explanation. Okay, but I'm going to watch him until the water comes back to make sure he's okay. That's very kind of you. They sat there together, all three of them, watching over a tiny crab in a tide pool, waiting for the ocean to reclaim what was hers. And when the wave finally came, washing the crab back to sea, Noah cheered like he'd personally saved a life. He made it! He shouted. He's going home! Lucas looked at Megan, saw his own emotion reflected in her eyes. Such a small moment. Such a simple thing. And yet it contained everything. Love, hope, the fragile beauty of living in a world where loss was inevitable, but connection was still possible. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For being here. For choosing this. For choosing us. Megan took his hand, squeezed tight. I didn't choose this, Lucas. It chose me. The day I pulled you over in the rain, I didn't know it then, but my life changed in that moment. You changed me. Noah changed me. This family changed me. For better or worse? Definitely better. She smiled. Even on the hard days, even when I'm scared and overwhelmed and certain I'm going to mess everything up, even then, this is better than anything I ever had before. Same, Lucas said. Same. Noah ran over, sand covering every inch of him, grinning with pure joy. Can we get ice cream now? The crab made it home, so we should celebrate. Megan laughed. I think that's an excellent idea. They walked together toward the boardwalk, Noah between them, holding both their hands. And Lucas thought that maybe this was what Sarah had meant all along. Not happiness as a feeling, but happiness as a choice, a direction, a family you built from the wreckage of the one you lost. It wasn't the life he'd planned. It wasn't the life he'd imagined all those years ago when he'd married Sarah and dreamed of 4 children and a house in the suburbs and growing old together. But it was a good life, a full life, a life worth living. And that, he realized, was the only thing that really mattered. The cottage was quiet that night. Noah asleep in his room, Sargent curled at the foot of his bed. Lucas and Megan sat on the porch, watching the stars appear one by one over the dark ocean. I've been thinking, Megan said. Still dangerous. She smiled. I've been thinking about the future, about what comes next. What about it? She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I want this. Forever. Not just living together, not just being partners. I want the whole thing, the commitment, the promises, the legal recognition that says we're a family, not just 2 people who happen to share an address. Lucas's heart rate quickened. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying. She turned to face him, her eyes bright in the starlight. I'm saying I want to spend the rest of my life with you, with Noah, with this messy, beautiful, impossible thing we've built. She paused. I'm saying I want to marry you, Lucas, if you'll have me. Lucas stared at her. He thought about everything that had led them here. The rain-soaked night, the torn ticket, the grief, and the fear, and the slow, painful work of learning to love again. He thought about Sarah and how she would feel about this moment, this question, this woman who had helped put him back together. He thought about the ring in his dresser drawer, not Sarah's ring, but a new one, One he'd bought 3 months ago and had been carrying around ever since, waiting for the right moment. Hold that thought, he said, and went inside. When he came back, he was holding a small velvet box. Megan's eyes went wide. Lucas, you beat me to it. He laughed, a slightly unsteady sound. I've been trying to figure out how to do this for weeks. I had this whole plan, dinner at the restaurant where we had our first real date, rose petals, the whole cheesy thing. But you beat me to it. I didn't know I know. He dropped to one knee on the porch, the ocean roaring in the background, the stars watching overhead. Megan Brooks, you are the most stubborn, complicated, beautiful person I've ever met. You crashed into my life at the worst possible moment and somehow made everything better. You loved my son when you didn't have to. You loved me when I was too broken to love myself. Lucas, let me finish. He took her hand, opened the box to reveal a simple diamond ring that caught the starlight. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep next to you every night. I want to fight with you about stupid things and make up in the kitchen while Noah pretends to be grossed out. I want everything, Megan, the good and the bad, and all the messy stuff in between. Will you marry me? Megan was crying now, happy tears, the kind that spilled down her cheeks like rain. Yes, she said. Yes, absolutely yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for her all along. And when he stood up and pulled her into his arms, kissing her under the vast canopy of stars, Lucas felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Complete, unshakable peace. They had found their way home. The news spread quickly, the way news always does when it carries the weight of joy. Lucas called his parents first, standing on the cottage porch while Megan sat inside with Noah, explaining to him what engagement meant and why Gerald should definitely be the ring bearer. His mother answered on the second ring, and the moment he said the words, she started crying, the good kind of crying, the kind that had been missing from her voice for over 2 years. Oh, Lucas, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so happy for you. We both are. His father's voice came through in the background, gruff but warm. Tell him we're proud of him. Tell him Sarah would be proud too. Lucas felt his throat tighten. Thanks, Dad. When do we get to meet her? This Megan? You've told us bits and pieces, but I want to see the woman who brought my son back to life. Soon. We'll come visit soon. They talked for another 20 minutes, about wedding plans that didn't exist yet, about Noah's progress, about all the small updates that accumulate between phone calls. And when Lucas finally hung up, he felt something shift in his chest. A loosening. A release. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. And his parents could hear it in his voice. Megan's call to James was harder. Lucas listened from the kitchen, giving her privacy while staying close enough to offer support if she needed it. Her voice was careful, measured, the way it always got when she talked to her brother, protective walls built from years of disappointment. I'm getting married, she said, to Lucas, the man I told you about. Silence on the other end, long enough that Lucas wondered if James had hung up. Then, That's wonderful, Megan. I'm happy for you. Really. Are you? Yes. James's voice was quiet, serious. I know I haven't been there for you. I know I've failed you in ways I can never make up for. But I'm glad you found someone. I'm glad you're not alone anymore. I was never alone, James. I just felt like I was. Megan paused and Lucas could hear the struggle in her breathing. Mom's funeral. When you came, I realized something. I'd been so angry at you for so long that I forgot what it felt like to have a brother, and I don't want to feel that way anymore. I don't want to carry that anger into my marriage, into my new family. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to try, to have a real relationship, not just birthday cards and holiday phone calls, but something real. Her voice cracked slightly. I'm saying I want you to come to the wedding as my brother, as someone who matters. The silence that followed was different this time, weighted with emotion rather than absence. I'd like that, James said finally. I'd like that very much. When Megan hung up, she sat for a long moment, staring at nothing. Lucas came to sit beside her, not speaking, just present. "That was hard," she said eventually. "I know. But it felt right. Like maybe I've been holding on to something I should have let go of years ago." She looked at him, her eyes bright. "I don't want to be angry anymore, Lucas. I don't want to carry all that old pain into our future." "Then don't. Leave it here. Leave it in the past where it belongs." "Is it that simple?" "No, it takes work. But you've already started." He kissed her forehead. "I'm proud of you." She leaned into him, and they sat together in the quiet cottage, listening to the distant sound of waves and Noah's chatter from the other room, where he was explaining to Gerald exactly how a ring bearer was supposed to walk. They decided on autumn for the wedding. It seemed fitting, a season of change, of letting go, of preparing for new beginnings. They chose a small venue, an old converted barn on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by apple orchards and rolling hills that would be ablaze with color when October arrived. The planning was surprisingly easy once they accepted what they wanted. Not a grand affair, not a statement, just a celebration. Family and close friends, good food and better company. A ceremony that reflected who they were, not who anyone expected them to be. "I want to write our own vows," Megan said one evening, curled up on the couch with a wedding planning book she'd been ignoring for the past hour. "Okay. And I want Noah to have a real role, not just ring bearer, something meaningful." "What were you thinking?" "I don't know, maybe he could say something, read a poem, make a speech about Gerald's opinions on marriage?" Lucas laughed. "That last one might actually be the most entertaining option." "I'm serious. He's not just your son anymore. He's becoming mine too, and I want this wedding to reflect that, to show him that he's part of this, not just a witness to it." Lucas thought about this, about what it would mean to his son to stand up in front of everyone and be acknowledged as part of this new family. "I have an idea," he said slowly. "What if we let him decide? We could explain what the wedding means, tell him he can participate however he wants, and see what he comes up with. That's either brilliant or terrifying. Probably both." They asked Noah the next day, sitting at the kitchen table with the solemnity the occasion deserved. "We want you to be part of the wedding," Lucas explained. "Not just carrying the rings, but really part of it. And we thought we'd let you decide how you want to participate." Noah considered this with the gravity of a 5-year-old being offered important responsibility. "Can Gerald participate too?" "Of course." "And can I wear a cape?" Megan bit her lip to keep from laughing. "We can discuss the cape." "Okay," Noah nodded firmly. "Then I want to give a speech about how we became a family. Gerald and I have been working on it." Lucas and Megan exchanged a glance, surprised, touched, slightly terrified about what a 5-year-old's speech might contain. "That sounds wonderful, buddy. Do you want to practice it for us?" "Not yet. It's not ready. Gerald says the best speeches need time to marinate." "Marinate?" "That's what Mrs. Chen says about her chicken. Things taste better when they marinate." Lucas couldn't argue with that logic. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a blur of activity. Megan's dress was simple and elegant, ivory silk, tea-length, nothing like the elaborate gown she'd once imagined for herself as a young girl dreaming of some day. She'd let go of those expectations the same way she'd let go of so many others. This wasn't about fantasy. This was about reality, about choosing something that fit who she actually was. Lucas bought a new suit, dark blue, after Noah proclaimed that gray was boring and Gerald agreed. He found himself not minding the concession. There was something freeing about letting his 5-year-old influence his wedding attire. The guest list was small but significant. Lucas's parents flew in from Ohio, his mother fussing over Noah the moment she arrived, his father shaking Megan's hand with gruff approval. Mrs. Chen was invited, of course, looking delighted to be included in something beyond babysitting. A few of Lucas's colleagues from work, the ones who'd been kind during his hardest years, Dr. Patterson, who had done so much to help Noah heal. James arrived 3 days before the wedding, looking uncomfortable in a way that suggested he wasn't used to being anywhere he was actually wanted. He and Megan circled each other carefully at first, the old wounds still visible even as they tried to move past them. But something had shifted. Lucas could see it in the way they spoke to each other, not with the forced politeness of strangers, but with the tentative hope of people trying to rebuild. They went to dinner together, just the two of them, and came back 3 hours later with red eyes and something lighter in their shoulders. We talked, Megan told Lucas that night. Really talked. About Mom, about Dad, about all the years we wasted being angry at each other. How do you feel? Sad, relieved, hopeful. She paused. He apologized. Actually apologized, not just vague platitudes about being busy. He said he knew he'd failed me and that he wanted to do better. Do you believe him? I want to. And maybe that's enough for now. She smiled slightly. He asked if he could walk me down the aisle. Since Dad can't. Lucas felt his heart catch. What did you say? I said yes. It felt right. Like maybe this wedding isn't just about us starting something new. It's about healing the things that were broken. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and golden, autumn sunlight streaming through the windows of the cottage they'd rented for the weekend. Lucas woke early, unable to sleep, and found himself standing on the porch in his undershirt and pajama pants, watching the mist rise from the apple orchards below. The world felt suspended somehow, balanced on the edge of something momentous. Big day! He turned to find his father standing in the doorway, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. The older man walked over, handed one to Lucas, and stood beside him in comfortable silence. Nervous? His father asked eventually. No, strangely, no. Lucas took a sip of coffee. I thought I would be. The last time I stood in front of people and made promises like this, I was terrified. Not because I didn't love Sarah, but because the weight of it, the forever of it, felt enormous. And now? Now I know that forever isn't guaranteed, that you can make all the promises in the world and still lose everything in a heartbeat. He looked at his father. But I also know that not making promises, not reaching for something just because you're scared of losing it, that's not living. That's just existing. And I've done enough existing. His father nodded slowly. Your mother and I were worried about you, you know, after Sarah. You disappeared inside yourself and we didn't know how to reach you. I know. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Grief does strange things to people. You survived it the only way you knew how. He paused. But seeing you now, seeing you with Megan, seeing how happy you are, it's like watching someone come back from the dead. Lucas felt tears prick at his eyes. She saved me, Dad. Her and Noah. They pulled me back when I didn't think there was anything worth coming back to. Then you hold on to them, you fight for them, and you never forget how lucky you are. I won't. They stood together in the morning light, father and son, and Lucas felt the weight of everything that had led to this moment, the grief, the love, the slow, painful journey toward hope. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For never giving up on me. For calling every Sunday even when I didn't want to talk. For being here now. His father smiled, the expression softening his weathered face. That's what family does. We show up, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. The ceremony began at 4 o'clock when the light was golden and soft. Lucas stood at the makeshift altar, a simple arch decorated with autumn leaves and white flowers, watching the assembled guests find their seats. Noah stood beside him, practically vibrating with excitement, Gerald clutched in his arms. The boy was wearing a tiny suit that matched Lucas's, complete with the cape he'd insisted on. It was purple velvet, and it was magnificent. Daddy? Noah whispered loudly. When is Megan coming? Gerald is getting nervous. Soon, buddy. Just a few more minutes. Okay. But tell Gerald it's going to be okay. He's worried he'll forget the rings. Lucas crouched down to his son's level. Gerald, you're going to do great. You're the best ring bearer any wedding has ever had. Gerald says thank you. He also says his cape is itchy. Before Lucas could respond, the music started. A simple acoustic version of a song Megan had chosen, something about coming home, and his attention was pulled to the end of the aisle. Megan appeared on James's arm, and Lucas forgot how to breathe. She was beautiful. Not in the polished, artificial way of magazines, but in a way that was entirely her own, strong and soft at once, her eyes bright with unshed tears, her smile tremulous but real. The ivory dress moved around her like water, and her dark hair was loose the way he loved it, decorated with tiny flowers that matched the arch. She walked toward him, each step deliberate, and Lucas could see everything that had brought them here. The rain-soaked traffic stop, the torn ticket, the months of grief and fear and slow, painful healing. All of it visible in her face. All of it worth it. James handed her off with a kiss to her cheek and a look that held apology and hope in equal measure. Then he took his seat, and Megan was standing in front of Lucas, and nothing else in the world mattered. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi yourself. You look nice. You look incredible." The officiant, a friend of Dr. Patterson's who had been recommended for her warmth, cleared her throat gently, and the ceremony began. They had chosen readings together, nothing traditional, just passages that meant something to them. Lucas's mother read a poem about second chances. James, his voice unsteady, read something about the persistence of love in the face of loss. Each reading was a thread in the tapestry they were weaving, a recognition that this moment didn't exist in isolation, but was built on everything that had come before. Then it was time for the vows. Megan went first, her voice shaking but clear. "Lucas, I never believed in love stories. I thought they were fairy tales, something other people got to have while I was too busy surviving to even hope for something more." She paused, steadied herself. "And then you came into my life. Wet, exhausted, wearing yesterday's shirt, holding yourself together by sheer force of will while your son waited in the back seat. I thought I was going to give you a ticket. Instead, I found my future." She took his hands, her grip firm. "I can't promise you perfection. I can't promise I won't be difficult, stubborn, scared, but I can promise to show up. Every day, every crisis, every ordinary Tuesday, I will show up. I will choose you and Noah and this family we're building over and over again for as long as I have breath in my body." Her voice broke slightly. "I promise to honor Sarah's memory, to help Noah remember his first mother, to never try to replace what was lost, only to add to what remains. I promise to be patient with your grief and to share mine with you. I promise to laugh at your terrible jokes and eat your questionable cooking and love you through every boring, beautiful, mundane moment of the life we're going to share." She smiled through her tears. "I promise you forever, Lucas, or as close to it as any of us can get." Lucas had to take a moment before he could speak. The lump in his throat was almost painful. "Megan," he began, his voice rough. 2 years ago, I was a man waiting to die. Not actively, I wasn't going anywhere, but I'd stopped believing that life could offer me anything but grief. I went through the motions for Noah. I breathed because my body refused to stop, but I wasn't alive. Not really." He squeezed her hands. "And then you pulled me over, and you looked at me with those sharp eyes, and you saw something I'd forgotten was there. You saw possibility. You saw hope. And instead of giving me a ticket, you gave me a chance." His voice steadied as he found his rhythm. "I can't promise you a life without pain. I've learned that lesson already, the hard way. But I can promise you that whatever pain comes, we'll face it together. I can promise to hold you when you cry and to make you laugh when you need it. I can promise to support your work, your independence, your need to be more than just someone's wife or mother." He thought of Sarah, of the vows he'd made to her in another life, and felt not grief but gratitude. "I promise to love Noah with everything I have and to welcome you into his life, not as a replacement, but as an addition, as his other mommy, the one who catches bad guys and makes excellent spaghetti and lets Gerald have opinions about important matters." A ripple of laughter went through the guests. "I promise you my past, my present, and my future. I promise you the man I was, the man I am, and the man I'm still becoming. I promise you all of it, Megan. Every broken piece and every healed scar, every fear and every hope." He lifted her hand to his lips, kissed it gently. "I promise you forever, starting now." The rings were exchanged, Noah presenting them with solemn ceremony, Gerald supervising, and then the officiant was smiling and saying words that Lucas barely heard because he was too busy looking at Megan, at his wife, at the future standing right in front of him. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Lucas pulled her close and kissed her. Not the chaste kiss of ceremony, but a real kiss, a promise kiss, the kind that said everything words couldn't capture. The guests erupted in applause. Noah tugged at Lucas's jacket, demanding to be included in the hug. Sargent, who had somehow escaped his carrier, wound around their ankles. And Lucas, surrounded by everyone he loved, felt something slot into place in his chest. Home. He was finally home. The reception was small and warm, held in the barn that had been strung with fairy lights and decorated with more autumn flowers. There was food and laughter, and the particular kind of joy that comes from people who have earned their happiness. Lucas danced with Megan, then with his mother, then with Mrs. Chen, who moved with surprising grace for her age. He watched James and Megan share a tentative conversation that ended with a real hug, something healing in the gesture. And then it was time for Noah's speech. The boy stood on a small platform that had been set up for toasts, Gerald tucked under his arm, cape flowing behind him like a tiny superhero. The guests quieted, curious about what a 5-year-old could possibly have to say. Noah cleared his throat importantly. Gerald and I have been working on this for a long time, he announced, so please listen carefully. He pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket, his own handwriting laboriously practiced, and began to read. Once upon a time there was a daddy who was very sad. His name was Lucas, and he missed his wife Sarah, who went to live in the stars. He had a son named Noah, that's me, and they were a family of 2, which is still a family, but sometimes felt lonely. Lucas felt tears start to gather in his eyes. One rainy night, a police officer named Megan pulled Daddy over because he was driving too fast. Gerald says that was against the rules, but sometimes people break rules when they're hurting. Megan saw that Daddy was hurting, and instead of being mean, she was kind. That was the first magic. Noah looked up from his paper, making sure everyone was paying attention, then continued. After that, Daddy and Megan became friends. Then they became more than friends. And then Megan became my other mommy, which was the second magic. He paused, consulting with Gerald briefly. The third magic is today. Because today Daddy and Megan are getting married, which means we're a real family now. Not a family of 2, but a family of 4. Me, Daddy, Megan, and Gerald. Plus Sargent, who is also family, even though he's a cat. A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. Gerald wanted me to tell everyone that being a family isn't about where you start. It's about where you end up. We started with sadness, and we ended up with love. We started with rain, and we ended up with sunshine. We started with 2, and we ended up with more. Noah folded his paper carefully. Gerald also wanted me to say that my first mommy, Sarah, is watching from her star right now. And she's happy, because she loved Daddy, and she wanted him to be happy, and now he is. And she loved me, and she wanted me to have a family, and now I do. His voice wavered slightly. So thank you, Megan, for being my other mommy. Thank you for loving Daddy when he needed it. Thank you for making us a family. He looked at the crowd with all the seriousness of childhood. The end. Gerald says you can clap now. The applause was thunderous. Lucas swept Noah into his arms, holding him close, unable to speak through the emotion clogging his throat. Megan was crying openly, reaching for both of them, pulling them into a 3-way embrace that felt like everything he'd ever wanted. That was beautiful, buddy, Lucas managed. Gerald helped. Gerald is the best elephant in the whole world. I know. That's why he's my best animal friend. The rest of the evening blurred together in a haze of happiness. More dancing, more laughter, more moments of connection that would become treasured memories. At one point, Lucas found himself standing alone at the edge of the party, watching his new wife dance with his son, her head thrown back in laughter as Noah attempted to spin her. His mother appeared beside him, wine glass in hand. She's wonderful, she said simply. She is. And you're different than you were, lighter, like you finally put down something heavy you'd been carrying. Lucas nodded slowly. I think I did. Sarah would have approved, you know, of all of this. The mention of Sarah's name didn't hurt the way it used to. It felt instead like an acknowledgement, a recognition. I hope so. I know so. His mother touched his arm. She loved you, Lucas, fiercely, and she wanted you to be happy, not sad forever, not stuck in grief, but happy. She gestured at the scene before them. This would have made her so happy. Lucas felt something release in his chest. the last remnant of guilt he'd been carrying, the fear that moving forward was somehow a betrayal. Thanks, Mom. Thank you for letting us be part of this, for coming back to life. She kissed his cheek and drifted away, and Lucas stood there for a long moment, watching his family, feeling the weight of gratitude. He thought about everything that had led to this moment, the grief that had nearly destroyed him, the rain-soaked night that had changed everything, the small moments of connection that had slowly, carefully rebuilt what was broken. He thought about Sarah, about the love they'd shared, about the son she'd given him. He thought about Megan, about her strength and her vulnerability, about the way she'd shown up when he needed her most. He thought about Noah, about the resilience of children, about the way his son had embraced change with a bravery that put most adults to shame. And he thought about the future, the ordinary days and the extraordinary moments that would fill the years to come, the challenges they would face, the joys they would share, the life they would build together, one day at a time. This was what happiness looked like, he realized, not the absence of pain, but the presence of love, not a destination, but a direction, not perfection, but persistence. He had chosen this direction, and he would keep choosing it every single day for as long as he lived. Lucas walked back to the dance floor, cutting in to sweep Megan into his arms while Noah giggled and spun away to find his grandparents. "What were you thinking about over there?" Megan asked. "You looked a million miles away." "Not a million miles, just thinking about how we got here." And I'm grateful for all of it. The good parts, the hard parts, the terrifying parts. Every single moment that led to this. Megan smiled, that real smile that still made his heart skip. Even the speeding ticket? Especially the speeding ticket. She laughed and pulled him closer, and they swayed together under the fairy lights, while their son played nearby, and their future stretched out before them, unknown, but no longer frightening. 3 years later, Lucas would stand in the same barn, holding a newborn daughter, while Noah, now 8, still carrying Gerald everywhere, explained to anyone who would listen that he was the best big brother in the world. Megan would be beside him, exhausted and radiant, watching their family with wonder in her eyes. James would be there too, a regular presence now, the rift between siblings finally healed. And somewhere overhead, Lucas would imagine 2 stars shining a little brighter than the others, Sarah and Megan's mother, watching over the family their loved ones had built. But that was the future, and this was now. Now there was music and laughter, and a 5-year-old in a purple cape. Now there was a woman in ivory silk who had chosen him, and a community of people who had shown up to witness their joy. Now there was everything he'd thought he'd lost, returned to him in a different form. "I love you," he said against Megan's ear. "I love you too. Thank you for pulling me over." She laughed, that surprised laugh that he would never get tired of hearing. "Thank you for driving too fast." "I was desperate. I know. I could see it in your eyes." She pulled back to look at him. "I'm glad I saw it. I'm glad I stopped." "Me too." The song ended and another began, and they kept dancing. Outside, the autumn leaves fell golden and red, and the stars began to appear one by one. Inside, a new family celebrated the beginning of forever. And Lucas Hale, who had once been a man waiting to die, felt himself fully, completely, irrevocably alive. This was the story of how a speeding ticket became a second chance, of how grief became love, how brokenness became wholeness, how 2 wounded people found each other in a rainstorm and decided to build something beautiful from the wreckage. It wasn't the life Lucas had planned. It wasn't the life Megan had expected, but it was the life they had chosen. And that made all the difference. In the end, that was the lesson, the one that Noah and Gerald had articulated so perfectly. Being a family isn't about where you start. It's about where you end up. They had ended up here, together, home. And they were going to be okay. They were going to be more than okay. They were going to be happy.